have to get to midfield for a first down. Pressure coming. Levis throwing, looking deep, and it is incomplete. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to stop this 5-game losing streak as boos rain down in Nashville.
The boos were a-coming yesterday, and the Titans were a-losing to Jacksonville. I could not believe it. Even though I did pick Jacksonville to win on Sunday or on Friday, I could not believe it. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Of course, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Ian, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Outstanding. We got a little studio renovation if you're watching the live stream. You see on that, which I'm very, very excited about going into the new year. But let's get to what everybody wants to talk to today. Everybody wants to talk about, everybody wants to discuss, and let's get right to it. Yesterday, for some of you that went to the game yesterday, I was not one of you, by the way, but for some of you that went to the game yesterday must have been excruciating. It must have been painful. It was painful enough to watch with my dad in the confines of the living room of his house. And yet I'm here to tell you right now, yesterday was a good day. I'm going to take that back. Excuse me. Yesterday was a great day for the Tennessee Titans. I'm just going to tell you what it is. It was a great day. Sorry if you don't like it. Sorry if you were embarrassed. But nobody outside of this zip code watched yesterday's game. Everybody who didn't even watch it, they already thought you stunk. It's not like beating Jacksonville is going to make them think that you're good, bad, and did. They don't care. And yeah, after the Titans game was over, I did the same thing I did last week. I watched Carolina and the Eagles. Come on, Carolina. It would have been nice if they had won. I watched the Jets and the Dolphins. Come on, Jets. It would have been nice if they had won. It would have been nice if the Giants had found a way to win. But we can't have it all. Losing yesterday helped the Tennessee Titans. The long-term future of the Titans yesterday was good, and I am convinced of it. Losing yesterday helps the Titans get their quest of the best possible draft pick. And it also hurt Jacksonville from being able to land Travis Hunter, who, again, seems like the number one pick in this year's draft. But what was the most important thing? Forget about the draft position. The most important thing about yesterday's game was that it gives us answers. It gives us answers to questions that we've had all year, questions that we've had even bigger than the season itself, but really even after last year. After Amy Adams-Strunk decided to move on from Mike Vrabel, she decided to go a completely different direction. And again, that's her priority. Her prerogative. She owns the team. She can do whatever she wants. But now we have some answers. The Titans have 3 wins on the season. The Dolphins win came against their third quarterback. The Patriots win was an empty calorie win that meant nothing against a horrible team at home in overtime. And the Texans game was a game that you won with some divisional juice. It was exciting, but let's not forget, you gave up 8 sacks. You threw a pick 6. You fumbled the ball twice. You should have lost that game. Yesterday, there was no such luck like that strip sack against New England where the ball bounced your way. You played the worst team in the NFL that had already been eliminated from the playoffs and was out there with a backup quarterback at home, and Jacksonville had neither starting tackle. And you lost. Your quarterback, when it comes to answers, your quarterback is missing guys wide open in the end zone. Because I hate to say it, but he's probably not good enough. Your head coach lost a game by 4 points in which he sacrificed 2 field goals because he was going for it, drawing up plays for Jeffrey Simmons. Bill Cowher was giving Brian Callahan the business on CBS, both at halftime and after the game yesterday. Your general manager's free agency bonanza has you out of the playoffs on December 8th. Your president of football operations, with his injury analytic AI model, couldn't predict that the $25 million corner, who the rest of the league would not trade for, would miss most of this season. And your owner's consistent management restructuring, meddling right down to the coach, the quarterback, the GM, in the middle of the season, everything she's done over the last 2 years has meddled yourselves right down to the bottom of the NFL. And after yesterday's loss, there is no intellectually honest person that can deny it. The players can say all they want. We're not the worst team in the NFL. No, we're a good team. Good teams aren't 3-10. Good teams don't lose at home to Jacksonville with a backup quarterback. Good teams don't score 6 points on the league's worst defense. It is what it is. Even the distinguished gentleman in the YouTube chat, the biggest Rand Club supporter there is, even he probably can't deny it anymore, although I'm sure he'll try. And since I was right about this from the beginning, from this time last year, I was right. Maybe now we should listen to me. And the truth is, the owner yesterday, I'm sure she was embarrassed. She should be embarrassed. Again, 2 years ago, she took her franchise back. And since then, they've won 9 games and lost 26. She needs to start over, and she needs to stay out. This team is at the bottom of the league, and they're going nowhere. And if you didn't know that, yesterday was a reality check. The GM stinks. The coach, hate to say it because I really like him, probably stinks. QB stinks. There's a chance they get better, but it's not a good chance that they get better at all. This time last year, I wouldn't tell you that Levis stunk. But he's a second-year quarterback who's throwing for 160 yards against one of, if not the single worst defense in the National Football League. And I tried to tell the Titans. They wouldn't listen. I said, hey, the day after they fired John Robinson, I told the Titans, I said, I do not want to be Moses roaming the desert. Because I remember what it was like between Floyd Reese and John Robinson. And it was the Bermuda Triangle, and you were lost. Oh, no, Jared, it won't be that way. And I told the Titans, I told Brian Callahan the day after he got hired, I told him the right tackle story. And I said, you got to get a right tackle. And I told him that, you know, OTM, well, what's the backup plan here at right tackle? Well, what if it doesn't work out with PT? What are we going to do? I told them to clean house last year. They begged me. They said, give Rand a chance. And here you sit. 3 wins. 1 real quality win. Malik Willis, quarterbacking the Green Bay Packers, has as many wins as you do this year and has more wins over Jacksonville. So it's time to start over, and it is time for the owner to stay out of it. She got her. There's no, oh, if this guy wasn't injured, oh, if this guy didn't do this, oh, if this, you scored 6 points on the worst defense in the league. A team with its backup quarterback whose coach might as well already be fired. It should be noted, last year, the season that was completely unacceptable, according to the owner, you beat Jacksonville at home in the last game of the year. So now it's time to do it my way. Because doing it your way has sucked. It sucked after you fired John Robinson. It sucked when you hired Rand Carthon and forced him into the shotgun marriage with Mike Vrabel. And it sucks even worse now with Brian Callahan, Rand Carthon, and Chad Brinker running the franchise. It's time to change. And after yesterday, I don't think there's any real question about it, is there? 615-737-1025, which is our phone number if you want to weigh in on yesterday. And I think she knows it. And that's why I think yesterday in the big picture was a good day to be a Tennessee Titan fan. 615-737-1025. I read something, and Paul talked about it yesterday, that happened after the game, that I am telling you, this is the crux of the problem. We'll get to it next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game.
Now it's 4th down and 3. Levis to the end zone, and it is incomplete. Intended for Westbrook-Ikhine. And the Titans come up empty in the red zone with 1:11 to go. They do have all 3 timeouts, so we are not done yet.
And that's been the story of the game for them in the red zone, not being able to finish. Throws this behind Westbrook-Ikhine, goes up, able to get 2 hands. Would have been a tough catch. Darnell Savage closing in on him, doing a really good job of forcing a tough catch as it's above his head and shoulders, trying to come away with it.
I cannot tell. I'm watching the game. Third down, Calvin Ridley catches the ball on the sideline and then runs out of bounds. And did you see Ridley's face when he realized he thought it was defensive back was above him, and when he turns around, sees there wasn't any defensive back, he just drops his head. I laughed so hard, and then it was fourth down, and I'm thinking, please do not get this. Please do not get this. Please do not get this. I see the ball going in the direction of NWI, who is Mr. Reliable. And I'm like, oh, God, that's going to be a touchdown. No. Yes! When they missed it. And some of you Titan fans out there, you're going to say, Jared, you're not a real Titan fan. You should have been rooting for the Titans. The fact that you would high-five your dad after they missed that. No.
Ride or die.
The difference between me and you all, the ones that really boo-hooed through this thing, because I think there were a lot of Titan fans like me yesterday, the difference between me and you is that I've already lived through the Jacksonville game once. Excuse me. I did, yes. It was called New England. Earlier this year, you beat New England. You did nothing special. You had Mason Rudolph at quarterback. You won by 3 points in overtime. And the freaking coach cried after the game because it was like, oh, we won. We did it. It just validates everything we've done. And then the next week, you went and got teeth kicked in because you suck. You need to recognize that you suck. And there needs to be no doubt, because regardless of the outcome of that game, again, decide by whether or not NWI catches the ball. You still suck. Even if you had won, you would have still sucked. But now there's no denying it because you actually lost. And because the quarterback, I hate to say it, and the line stinks, and it doesn't have great receivers either. But I knew, even though the Titans had all 3 timeouts, I knew they weren't going to stop them 3 times, get the ball, and come all the way down the field. I knew that. So when NWI didn't catch that ball, I knew you were going to lose. I knew you were going to fall down in the draft. And I knew that there was no way to deny that the way this thing is operating is fundamentally flawed, which I have been telling you about for over a year. And I've gotten called every name in the book. So when I saw that ball go incomplete, I said, yes, greater days are ahead for the Titans. Now, Paul Koharski wrote something in his column at paulkoharski.com, and he said it on his little post-game video show or whatever after it was over. And this is the kind of stuff I don't want to hear. Here's what Paul Koharski and other media members I talked to that were in the locker room after the game, here's what they noticed amongst the Titans brass.
So I led my column, Burke Nihill, team president, and Chad Brinker, president of football operations. Long talk outside the locker room that lasted beyond any player being in the locker room. I don't think they're hatching a plan to fire somebody in that setting, but very serious and long conversation post-game that usually wouldn't take place in that spot at that time. So very interesting.
Okay. So Paul noted this, and I talked to somebody else yesterday that covers a team that was like, yeah, like if they're going to have those kind of conversations, like do that in private away from the media and away from the players. Again, this is the president of the team and CEO, Burke Nihill, and the president of football operations, Chad Brinker. Now, I know Burke outranks Chad because I have common sense, but I'm not used to an organization having 2 presidents. That's kind of new. President 1, president 2. But that entire thing that Paul was talking about right there, about, Burke Nihill and Chad Brinker had a long conversation after the game, and who knows what that was about. That's the problem. Like when I hear that, I'm like, this is the problem. The fact that these are the people that are trying to hatch some kind of plan to save the football team at 3-10. These are the people that got you into the problem to begin with. These are the people Amy is listening to. Amy, whatever those 2 are talking about, I don't care. I don't care what Burke Nihill and Chad Brinker are coming up with, because I don't want Burke Nihill and I don't want Chad Brinker making decisions for my football team, because every decision they've been a part of with Amy's been an unmitigated disaster. Burke's not a football guy. He's a lawyer. And I hate to say it, but he kind of seems, and I like Burke, I really do, but he seems kind of like a yes man to Amy. Amy wants to fire John Robinson in the middle of the year? Go ahead, Amy. And Chad Brinker, what in the F does this guy do? Serious question. What does he do other than just blow smoke up everybody in that organization's ass all the time? He was asked what his job was on the preseason broadcast. He said his job was to service the head coach. I know that because we've played that clip about 47 times. So let's have a brainstorm outside the locker room. Let's save the Titans, Burke Nihill and Chad Brinker. No, we need to save the Titans from Burke Nihill and Chad Brinker. Burke, you get back to the stadium and PSL sales and go over there. And Chad, you go update your resume and start packing your office because we want somebody that actually knows football to run the football team. And if Amy thinks these guys that have helped her get in this mess from the beginning have any chance of getting them out of it, I'm sorry, but they've failed. We're doing it their way. And their way is what has you as the worst team, if not 1, 2, 3 at the bottom. Like, you might not be worse than the Giants, who are actively tanking. But you're right there. You lost to Jacksonville. So why would Amy listen to the same guys? And I like Burke. I do. He's a good man, I think. But I like winning football games more. And when Amy got it right the first time, which is why I have belief that she can get it right the second time. When Amy got it right the first time, it was Steve Underwood who was running the operation as the team CEO. And it is well documented because Steve Underwood said it and John Robinson has said it. In fact, the only person who hasn't said this is Floyd Reese. But when they were trying to figure out what to do, they picked up the phone and they called him because Underwood knew that he didn't know football, but he knew Floyd did. He wasn't wowed by some boy wonder with a computer and an MBA degree from MIT to sit there and say, this is the injury prevention model we need to go trade for L'Jarius Sneed. So, again, get these guys out and get in people that know football. And I've told you all along, especially when you didn't want to hear it, that everything these guys said, it's all words. Ran and Chad, and it's all just gobbledygook. Burke does an interview about the new stadium and starts talking about the home field advantage that the Titans are going to have in the new stadium because the players will not have to walk far from the parking lot to the locker room. Oh, great. So if I have any advice for Amy, it is stop letting the same goofballs who have dug you this hole that said, no, Amy, it's a good idea to fire the winning general manager in the middle of the season while you're in first place. No, Amy, it's a good idea to fire the head coach that knows what he's doing. And again, I was fine with firing Vrabel too, but that was as part of an entire house cleaning and bringing somebody in to actually run the team that knows football and letting them hire a real football coach. But instead, nobody wanted to hear it. They didn't want to hear it. They wanted to say, let Rand cook. They wanted to say, Jared, you're not fair. Give Rand a chance. Give them a chance. They know what they're doing. Jared, go ask Chad Brinker what he thinks of Rand Carthon. He'll tell you Rand Carthon's the best. And this team cannot even get lined up properly. The quarterback can't see a guy wide open in the end zone. They can't stop Mac Jones at the end of the game from throwing the ball at the same guy over and over and over and over again. So, again, when I hear, hey, Chad Brinker and Burke Nihill were having a long conversation outside the locker room, I'm like, I don't want to hear from the one guy who said, hey, we thought when we hired Brian Callahan, we thought we did a good job. And a week into training camp said, but now we know we've crushed it. You're 3-10. And I don't want to hear from the guy that tells me about the AI injury models and the great GM that you've hired and servicing the heck. I don't want to hear from these people don't know what they're doing. Let's get some good people in. Let's start listening to people that know football, unless you want to still be 3-10 next year and lose to Jacksonville. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We are to your phones. I just had to get those two things off my chest. It's time to start over. And yesterday was proof. And it's so nice. It's so nice that we know it. 615-737-1025 to your phones, plus the stupidest thing I think I have ever heard out of a head coach on the Titans. And that is, there's some pretty stupid things over the years. We'll get to that coming up. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
A lot of positive things. Disappointed in the outcome, but our defense played their tails off today. I thought we covered well on special teams. They were challenged to not let them start outside the 30. We never let them do that. We played great run defense for most of the game. And then at the end of the day, we needed to score in the red zone. We were 0 for 2 down there, and that's the difference in a tight ball game, in a divisional game. And that's you got to score touchdowns down there, and we didn't. So we're 0 for 2, and that's the difference in the ball game. Again, I thought there was a lot of positive things. We put ourselves in position and didn't execute when we had to have it the most, which is down there tight. Again, I'm disappointed in the outcome, certainly. But at the end of the day, we didn't do enough to win again. So go ahead.
We did positive things, Brian. A lot of positives. Ian, you saw the game yesterday. Can you give me a lot of these positive things they did yesterday?
I thought Pollard looked solid again.
Pollard played okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wouldn't say that it was like Derrick Henry out there, but okay.
Looked solid.
It was fine.
Cheeto got his first pick.
Yes, he did. By the way, I was a little worried. He celebrated. He celebrated pretty hard after getting that interception. And I'm like, with the calf and the hamstring.
Groin,
I don't know about that.
That kind of stands out for right now, but yeah.
Okay. So there's your head coach.
That's what I got off the top of my head.
There's your head coach. You just lost to the worst team in the NFL at home. You're 3-10. You're eliminated from the playoffs. We're not even really to the point to where you have to have your Christmas tree up yet. Although Jewish boy did put his first Christmas tree up. That's right. Put his first Christmas tree up this weekend. But again, Star of David, by the way, at the top, Ian. I think you'd probably like that.
Very good, yes.
But we had a lot of positives. Again, what I say all offseason, there's too much sunshine pumping for this to be true. Toxic positivity. Too much sunshine pumping. And when you say stuff like that after the game, Brian Callahan, and I know today you talked about, I have to worry about all the things. And so some of these things that happen are positive, and I can't just look at the wins and losses, although I know that's the business, but we did do some positive. Again, you can't say a lot of positives when you score 6 points and lose at home to Jacksonville. You say that, I can't take you seriously. Cannot take you seriously. Phone line served by Wilson County Hyundai.com on a Titans Monday. Michael has been waiting very patiently and will kick us off today. Michael, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, the worst part about all this is just as an overall Nashville sports fan, we got nothing to be excited about. The Predators suck. The Titans suck. Vanderbilt's only got one game left. The collegiate basketball teams are pretty good. That's about it, though. Thankfully, my dad's originally from Minnesota, so we can root for the Vikings and your boy Sammy D. But just overall,
Sam Chise.
The state of Nashville sports it's down the drain right now, at least professionally. Collegiate's all right, but not being a UT Vols fan,
Michael, I would agree with you 100% that all the teams here, thank you for your call. I would agree with you that all the teams here suck. And the Predators suck, and they lost again. And I said the other day, and I don't want, again, it's Titans Monday, but I did say if they lose on Saturday, they need to fire the coach. They lost on Saturday against that terrible Ottawa team. It has been a disastrous fall. And quite frankly, I do wonder if I am becoming depressed because these teams suck so bad. And I kind of feel a little bit like, you remember, and again, this is very dark and tragic, but Ledger, great actor and was just unbelievable in being the Joker in the Batman movie. And they said that because he got so into character for that, it kind of drove him crazy. I'm a little worried that the team sucking around here so bad are starting to drive me a little crazy. Let's go to Terry, who's up next here on our program. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Terry.
Hey, Jared. Just a couple of comments. Number one, I don't know what billion-dollar organization would allow a couple of people with zero experience in that role to run the business. I think both of them are way over their heads.
You talking about Carthon and Callahan?
Yes. And number two, the quarterback, I'm not a big, I should have prefaced this. I'm not a big Titans fan. I'm in the area, but not from the area. And I do pull for him, but I'm not diehard. But the quarterback he just doesn't seem to be, to me, he looks like somebody that should spend less time in the weight room and more time in the film room. You just don't see many jacked quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame. And I don't think that that's a requirement. But then most Sundays, I feel like I'm watching an episode of Varsity Blues or Friday Night Lights with him. And that's all I got.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to hit the thing on the Carthon and the Callahan front. It's not that these guys didn't have experience, because they did. Rand was in the front office in Atlanta. LA and San Francisco, and Brian Callahan was an assistant coach for a long time and was offensive coordinator of the Bengals. That technically counts as kind of the prerequisite experience that you need to be a head coach in the NFL. You know, Sean McVay didn't have any head coaching experience before he took the Rams job. He's doing pretty well. Here's what I will say, though. As far as their GM has no experience outside as a GM. Their president of football operations, Chad Brinker, has no experience as leading a franchise. Their head coach has no experience as a head coach. Their team president, CEO, has no experience with other teams running them. There's really no prior experience to lead the operation. You know, when this thing got good and you made the playoffs and you turned it around, Steve Underwood was the CEO. He had 40 years of experience. Mike Mularkey was the head coach. He had, 40 years of coaching experience and 5 or 6 years of 2 different stops as a head coach? You don't have any of that right now. I think there's something to that. As far as Levis and the weight room and all that, that doesn't drive me. I don't care about that. I care about whether or not you can see the tight end coming open underneath the middle, and he couldn't. And look, I mean, what happened before the end of the half, I thought that was criminal. Whether you want to put it on the coach or the tackle, I put it on the coach and the tackle, but that was criminal that they got him hurt before the half. Let's go to Steve, who's up next on our program. Steve, thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Steve.
Hey, Jared. Thanks for taking my call, man.
Sure.
I've been a PSL holder for a pretty good while now, and I've seen the ups and downs, and this is different this time. It just seems like to me, I'm kind of wondering, when is it too much and the fans check out, and you got so many fans that are not going to the games anymore? How do you feel that stadium, and where does the program go from here?
So, Steve, I think that's a good question. And again, the last time they played a home game, they played Minnesota. And we sat here. We sat up on the rooftop at JBJ's, where we do the pregame show every Sunday for the home games. And we sat up on the rooftop, and Derek, Chris, and I, and the three of us have been doing this pregame show for almost 10 years. You know, it was first me, Floyd, and Derek. Then it was me, Floyd, and Chris. Then it was me and Chris. Then it was me, Chris, and Derek. And Mark Howard was there with us for a year. So Chris and I and Derek, we've all been doing this. We've been doing this long enough. And we're sitting up there on the rooftop, and we see nothing but Viking fans at JBJ's. We turn over to the next bar, and we see their rooftop, and there's nothing but Viking fans. You turn to the other side, and there's nothing but Viking fans. You look down on Broadway, and these people, they look like ants. It's like playing The Sims, roller coaster tycoon. And I look down, and there's nothing but purple on Broadway. And I look over to the walking bridge, and there's nothing but purple. Yesterday, there was nobody. There were like 5 people inside of JBJ's that were going to the game. There weren't people walking around the streets, a little bit here on the walking bridge, not a lot. The fan base has told the owner, screw this. And we're not doing this. And I'm the same way. I haven't gone. I can't remember. I think the last game I went to this year was the Packer game. Now, I do think I am going on Sunday against Cincinnati. But I think the fan base is sending a message to the owner. And look, this will happen whenever you lose. Years ago, Floyd told me the story that they wanted to have a meeting about how they could sell season tickets when they moved to Nashville. And that he got up in the meeting and he said, well, I'm going to go get ready for the draft so we can get some good players. And he knows that if you had a good team, people will come. And that's true. But again, Amy made herself the ire of the fan base by firing John Robinson and putting her name on it, and firing Mike Vrabel and putting her name on it. And so now, whether it's Rand, whether it's Brinker, whether it's Callahan, this whole post-Robinson-Vrabel era is really the Amy era. And so I think there are a lot of Titan fans that are tired of the sunshine pumping and are tired of the we've checked every box and the ball didn't bounce our way. And there were a lot of positives after the game and those kind of things. I think that they've told the owner what they think. which is that they don't think she's doing a very good job. And you're entitled to that opinion because, quite frankly, she ain't doing a very good job. So I'm with you. You know, when you say, hey, I look out, if there's nobody there, you're losing your fan base. Because even when Robinson traded A.J. Brown, which is a move that I've been told Amy was in support of, and Amy does not have a problem with it today, from what I've been told. Even when when they miss on the draft picks, the fan base doesn't blame Amy for Caleb Farley. But they do blame Amy for Rand. They do blame Amy for Callahan. They do blame Amy for the fact that Mike Vrabel's not here. And even though Vrabel stunk it up at the end and I thought deserved to be fired as part of an entire house cleaning, Vrabel was never this bad. And that's the problem. More your phone. 615-737-1025 on the program. 615-737-1025. Plus, something I will never, ever understand that happened yesterday. There's no explanation for it. We'll get to it next. I'm going to Company 1025 the Game.
So 1 second on the clock. Expect some type of Hail Mary play here by the Titans. But Hines Allen buries Levis, and the ball comes out. And Will Levis is hurt. Josh Hines Allen just absolutely crushed Will Levis. And Levis is grabbing his right shoulder, which was an injury that cost him 3 games earlier this year.
Yeah, he comes down really hard on his shoulder. J.C. Latham just beat completely.
So I want to talk about what happened before the end of the half yesterday. So McCorkle, Mac Jones, McCorkle is driving the Jags down the field at the end of the half. And then I think they got a penalty and they moved him out of field goal range. And then he throws the interception, which, I mean, Cowher was all over him at halftime about it. It was stupid, but it wasn't to me like, oh my God, how dare Mac Jones do that kind of thing. That I don't have a problem with. But what I did have a problem with was I had stopped paying attention because there was 1 second on the clock. And Ian, I thought they were just going to take a knee and go into halftime. And instead, next thing
Gotta take a shot.
I just hear, oh, and Levis goes down. And I turn over and I'm like, oh my God, he's grabbing his, it's either that AC joint or it's a broken collarbone. It's one or the other. And he's grabbing it. And I thought, these guys are stupid. I'm like, oh my God, what in the world just happened? And then you see the replay. J.C. Latham, the 7th overall pick in the draft, gives 0. And I mean 0 resistance to one of the better pass rushers in the NFL, Josh Hines Allen. And the entire half, I sat there on the couch thinking, what the hell did they just do? After the game, Brian Callahan was asked about it. He said, trying to get points before the half, trying to take advantage of the momentum of the turnover. And I put my head in my hands and I thought, oh my God. I'm like, sometimes I wonder if this guy knows how to coach. And this is a perfect example of it. We want to take advantage of the turnover with 1 second on the clock. Now, Ian, do you remember what they did on the first drive of the game? The first offensive drive. What the Titans did?
Not particularly.
They ran every single ball up the middle. They threw
They
one
did
little
start
pass
like
to Ridley.
6 or something runs in a row, yeah.
And everything was Pollard, Spears, Pollard, Spears, Pollard. Everything. And I saw that and I thought, okay, this is the game plan. And it makes sense. What don't the Titans have? Tackles. What do the Jags have? They have the number 1 pick at 1 pass rusher spot, and they have the number 7 pick in Josh Hines Allen, who's probably the better of the two, at the other spot. So what the Titans are going to do is they're going to run up the middle. Why? Because they don't want Levis to drop back with those 2 pass rushers and their athleticism coming off the edge. Made perfect sense to me. Well, if you're going to throw a Hail Mary before the half and you're going to throw it 40 yards down the field, what do you think's going to happen? What, are you going to leave guys into pass protect? You're going to send 1 guy down the field for a Hail Mary? No. You're going to send 5 guys out into the pattern to run all the way down the field, and Levis has to wait for those guys to have the time to be able to throw it down the field, which means your tackles, we know one of them, PT, is a train wreck. Latham is regressing. But again, even if Latham was a good player, which right now he's an okay rookie that's trending on regressing, and I'm getting a little tired of it. But again, when it comes to the tackle position, if you were to say, okay, Latham versus Josh Allen straight up, you're going to take Josh Allen. Just like Walker versus PT, you're going to take Travon Walker. And it's like Brian Callahan couldn't be too stupid to think that. He's like, oh yeah, even though our entire game plan is to protect our tackles who stink, what we're going to do against their incredibly talented and gifted pass rushers is we're going to have Levis drop back and stand back there as long as he can for, it's got to be 10 seconds in order to let everybody run down the field. And you got the quarterback hurt. And then on J.C. Latham, like maybe block for a second if you could. But Brian Callahan trying for a 1 in a million Hail Mary before the half got the quarterback hurt. That is coaching malpractice. Let's go to Adam in Portland, who's up next. So here on a Titans Monday. Adam, thank you for calling. Go ahead. What's up, Adam?
Yeah, so I think we're like 17 new starters away right now. Like I went through the roster. It's so bad. Here's the thing, and I haven't heard anybody talk about it and see if you agree or not. I feel like I could see the problem with the organization. They pick trendy picks. Like, I feel like that's their problem. When they picked J.C. Latham, he was the top tackle on the board. It was like there was no homework done. They did the same thing with Calvin Ridley. They did the same thing with the guard that you hate so much. He was the top pick. Brian Callahan was the top head coach candidate. Brand was the top executive. Like, all these guys that were trendy names at the time. I feel like there's nobody actually putting in work and going, hey, this person's like personalized custom to the Titans. It's just whatever's out there is out there. That's who we're going to go get. I feel like it's almost laziness by everybody. That's where I'm at with the big picture is I feel like there's no work being put in.
Yeah, I don't know where you're getting that from. Like, I don't know what, like, there's no work being put in on hiring Brian Callahan. I mean, I don't think that the Titans now look, I think the Titans listen to the fans too much. I think there is a little bit of that. And that's what leads to Amy firing John Robinson in the middle of the season the way she did. And some of the fans were like, yeah, because the fringes of the internet, I think, liked it. But I don't think that it's like the Titans take a poll every day and say, who should we go get? Now, I will tell you this. I think Rand just signs guys like you or I would on Madden football. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. Because The Athletic, Mike Sando, talks to all those executives off the record. You know, it's on the condition of anonymity so that they can actually say what they think. Because, like, the executive for the Dallas Cowboys, Will McClay, he can't go on record and say, I think Tavondre Sweat was a terrible pick. He can't say that. That's tampering, and he would never do that because, again, he wouldn't want anybody doing that to him. And the owners, you know, get upset about those. So you don't say things like that. But what they do is they'll say anonymously, hey, you know, I think that this is, you know, when the Titans drafted Caleb Farley, one of the executives said, good grief. I mean, his medicals were horrible. I mean, he's a good player, but good God, those medicals were bad. Well, after free agency, Mike Sando talked to a league executive who said, they don't have a plan. He's like, they just signed guys. Like, there's no plan there. They just signed them. It's just like, okay, you're signed. And it's like, wait a minute. So what are you building? What's the identity you're building around? Think about what Washington did. Washington went out and signed Allegretti and Biotish to really strengthen the interior of their offensive line. They went out and signed veteran leaders like Bobby Wagner to put on their team. They had just as much quote-unquote cap space as you did. But they didn't need to trade for an injured corner. You did. So I do think there's something like that, where once they get an idea in their head, they're going to do it no matter what. Like, they were never going to bring back Derrick Henry. They never even thought about it. And they'll pretend that they did, but they didn't. Because they just, once they get an idea in their head, that's it. And there's no talking them out of it. But as far as like, yeah, you know, we're only making trendy pick. I mean, that J.C. Latham pick, everybody hated that pick when it happened. So I'm not going to accuse them of that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. Of course, more of your phones. But we got to get to the quarterback. Was yesterday proof that Will Levis is not the guy? Or was it a bad game? We'll discuss next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks, we'll be giving away Predators tickets for the Tuesday, December 17th game against the Rangers. We'll be doing that later today in the program. And tomorrow will be your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming home game. Participate with Robbie and Joe tomorrow at 8:45 a.m. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. Titans, Monday, Titans fall 10-6 to the Jags in a game that was truly painful to watch. I mean, Ian, we've seen some boring stuff in our lives, but that might have been up there.
It's up there, yeah.
It was bad. It was bad yesterday.
I think they said it was officially the lowest scoring game of the NFL season.
That's embarrassing. But it was bad. I mean, it was, every bit of it was just like, ugh. It reminded me of the game you played last year against Carolina. You beat them by a touchdown. And I'm like, it's dreary looking outside. I don't want to go to the game. I'm watching the game because I love the Titans and also because it's my job, but who really gives a rat's ass? Like, woof. And it was a similar result. You lost. It didn't send shockwaves across the league. Last year, you won. It didn't change anything except for maybe giving you a little false hope about your quarterback. Well, yesterday did provide one thing I think that's really important, and that's clarity about the quarterback. He's not the guy. Yesterday was the confirmation. It was the nail in the coffin. It was the decision desk has returned. And the reality is, he's not the guy. And it's not about what he did yesterday. It's about what he didn't do. Playing the worst defense in the NFL, he didn't throw a touchdown pass. He didn't score a touchdown. Not one. Again, against the 32nd ranked defense. And you can't say he shouldn't have thrown a touchdown pass. Chig was wide open on one. Ridley was wide open on another one. If he puts the ball a little lower for NWI at the end of the game, that's probably a catch. So against the worst defense in the NFL, he did not operate one touchdown drive. Josh Allen yesterday had 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns. He did not lead a fourth quarter comeback to win the game, which again, hallmark of a franchise quarterback. 2-minute situations. You want the ball in their hands. They find a way. Not Levis. In fact, I don't think off the top of my head, Will Levis has a single fourth quarter comeback in his entire career that is a go down the field game-winning drive, except last year on the road at Miami. Didn't do it against Atlanta, didn't do it against Carolina, didn't do it against the Texans, and didn't do it yesterday. So he's got 1 over 2 years. He did not throw for 200 yards yesterday. Again, against the worst pass defense in the NFL. He did not throw for 200 yards. In a league where quarterbacks throw for 300 yards, he didn't throw for 200. He also didn't throw for 7 yards per attempt, which is kind of the line of demarcation. If you throw under 7 yards an attempt, that's a red flag. He threw for about 5.3, I believe, yards per attempt yesterday. His QBR, which is ESPN's metric that tries to isolate quarterback play, doesn't do a great job, but it tries. His QBR was 20 out of 100. That's terrible. He couldn't beat a team that was quarterbacked by Mac Jones. And they only scored 10 points. Again, we're not asking Levis to score 28. We're asking him to score 11. And if you can't do that at the end of year 2, when you know the offense, if you can't carry, and I don't care how bad your team is. Again, I'm not asking him to go beat the Chiefs. I'm not asking him to carry the team to beat the Brady Patriots. I'm asking him to get the ball down the field against the worst defense in the NFL. And it's not like this is his first game or second game. This is his 18th start. He's not a rookie anymore. You can't even lie and pretend that he's a rookie anymore, which a lot of the Bobos and the Boohoo crew wanted to do. And he can't do any of that. You can't be the guy. That is basic stuff. Again, I'm not talking about being Dan Marino, which when you draft a quarterback, that is the hope that he becomes a star. Not, boy, I tell you, we just used the 4th pick on a quarterback, and I hope he can become Ryan Tannehill. That's not what the hope is. But again, he couldn't throw for 200 yards and beat the 32nd ranked defense in the league at the end of year 2. And yes, I know Josh Allen had his struggles his first 2 years as a passer, and he developed. But he was 23 years old and threw in his second year 20 touchdowns and 9 picks. And his team went 10-6. And yes, the special teams for the Titans stinks. And yes, the defense isn't that good, but they gave up 10 points yesterday. Will Levis is not Josh Allen, folks. He's not the guy. And it's okay that he's not the guy because you tried. You did. You drafted him. You gave him a chance. You got him a coach, got him a receiver. You tried with the offensive line, albeit you did a terrible job, but you tried. But he can't even beat Jacksonville. No, that's not the guy. And at no point this year did I put my foot down and say, he's not the guy. I didn't do it after Chicago, though I felt pretty adamant. Didn't do it after the Jets, though I felt the confirmation. Didn't do it after Green Bay. Again, I had a pretty strong feeling, and I kind of knew what was what. But I didn't say, this is it. The results are in. He's not the guy. I am today. I mean, I recognize the improvement in his game. He didn't do anything crazy stupid yesterday. But again, that's not the bar. That's not the bar for being a franchise quarterback in the National Football League. The bar is 7 yards per attempt. The bar is 200 yards. The bar is beating up on the 32nd ranked pass offense. The bar is finding Chigakonkwo wide open in the end zone and throwing him the football and not trying to throw it, to a double tight end. But if anybody is going to say anything different, it'll be, well, there are still 4 games left. Yeah. And so now all of a sudden you think the guy that couldn't throw for 200 yards against the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL that had nothing to play for, the team that was ready to pack their bags and head to Cancun in a month, you really think all of a sudden he's going to turn into Brett Favre now? Anybody arguing that Will Levis still has the opportunity to prove that he's the guy is not serious. You're not serious. And so when it comes to the Titans and it comes to Levis and we can now say, in my opinion, we can say it's over. Because a replacement level quarterback probably wins the game yesterday. Mason Rudolph, who I don't even think is very good, probably wins the game yesterday. Considering Mason Rudolph played a similar game and beat the Patriots, it's kind of the point. I mean, I'm sorry. He's not the guy. 615-737-1025. We're to your phones. Plus, one thing I said yesterday at halftime got a lot of people worked up, and I stand by it. And I really don't know how you're going to argue otherwise. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company on a Titans Monday. It's 102.5 The Game.
Brian Callahan, for now, is keeping the offense on the field. And Jeffrey Simmons is coming out on the field for the Titans. He did catch a touchdown against the Jaguars a year ago.
Odd on a fourth down to bring in the defensive lineman. You usually see that earlier down here in these goal line plays. Let's see what Brian Callahan has drawn up.
Simmons, the fullback. 4th and goal. Levis to the end zone, and it is incomplete. I think Simmons was the first read. Levis comes back the other way, but the Titans come up empty. And let's go back to 4th and goal.
I want you guys to look at Chigo Conquos. He's coming through the line of scrimmage right there. He's the guy that's wide open for Will Levis. He doesn't see him. He goes at the net, and it ends up an incomplete. And like Andrew said, coal in the stocking, but he should have had a big present to open up right there for a touchdown.
Yes, never too early for the holiday cliches.
Bring James Lofton back. But you saw right there, Chig wide open. And I'm sorry, but a second-year quarterback can't miss that, and you can't not throw a touchdown pass. So to me, yesterday was confirmation Levis not the guy. Time to look for a new quarterback. But there was one thing I tweeted out at halftime yesterday, and Ian, the people were outraged about this.
Okay.
I said, Mac Jones has outplayed Will Levis. And the amount of, what? Mac Jones has not outplayed Will Levis. You're stupid. I can't believe you get paid to comment on sports. That I got was actually pretty shocking. And people were like, Mac Jones threw 2 interceptions and Will Levis threw 0 interceptions. And I'm like, guys, you watched the game. Did Mac Jones miss a wide open guy in the end zone for a touchdown? Again, the second Mac Jones interception was at the end of the half. There were 7 seconds left. He has to throw the ball, and, he has to throw it over the middle, call timeout to kick a field goal. He drops back, and the rush is there, and he's trying to figure what to do. He just throws the ball, and it gets intercepted.
Well, we would be crushing Levis for a play like that. So
no, but see, there was no points that came off the board.
No, I get it, but
saying?
it's still a panic decision bad.
It was a bad idea.
Yeah.
But again, there were no points that came off the board. Jacksonville didn't lose anything because of that. Like, nothing happened to Jacksonville because Mac Jones panicked and threw the ball for an interception. Whereas you lost 7 points because Will Levis couldn't see Chigakonkwo. Mac Jones led a 4th quarter comeback to win the game. And didn't you think when they scored that touchdown, didn't you think that was pretty much ball game? Mac Jones had a higher QBR, 32.8 to Levis's 20.6. Mac Jones threw for 220 yards. Levis threw for 160. Mac threw for 7.1 yards per attempt. And again, I wasn't even impressed by Mac Jones. I like Mac Jones. I think there might be a little talent there. Again, I don't think he's like I was feeling Sam Darnold, not ready to go there. But I was not impressed yesterday by Mac Jones at all.
Neither were very good, were they?
No, but he was better than Levis because that's how bad Levis was, that Mac Jones was better. And I'm not even convinced that it was really all that close.
It was close.
And yet the boo-hooers were like, again, QBR 32.8 to 20.6. Is that close?
I mean, they're both like ridiculously low grades. So
but
we're at this
one
point
is
where
so much worse than the other.
not that much worse.
It's like a third worse.
Well, when your numbers are that low, it's not a huge discrepancy.
And the fact that your numbers are that low is because you stink. Like, again, 5 yards an attempt. What are we doing? At least Mac threw for 7. Mac threw a touchdown, or I guess they didn't throw a touchdown. It was Bigsby ran that one in there, but he engineered a touchdown drive by throwing the ball to the same guy over and over and over and over again. And again, the crying, like, oh, that's not fair. Guys, Levis sucks. Like, it's in, it's official, it's written. He's not the guy. And getting outplayed by Mac Jones is an example of how he is not the guy. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Malika has been waiting patiently and is up next here on the program. Malika, go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call. It's horrible. Levis is horrible. everybody just needs to get fired. The offense, the defense, we need to restart. And Amy needs to think about what she's doing, and she really needs to stop making these horrible mistakes. Stop going to the games. It will teach her a lesson. Thank you for taking my call.
You got it, Malika. Again, I don't know if anybody, you don't need to tell the fans not to go to the games. They didn't go to the game yesterday. And they didn't go to the game against Minnesota. And I don't know what the crowd's going to be like on Sunday. I think I am going to the game on Sunday.
You love Joe Burrow.
Well, the in-laws from Canada are going to be in town.
Okay. Is this their first American football game?
Well, Lindsay's been, but this would be for,
All right. Fun.
I don't think that her dad's been to an NFL game. So I think, again, my dad, her dad, me will probably go to the game. Again, who knows? But
some good bonding
I'm going
time.
to the game
yes.
on Sunday. But at the same time, are Bengal fans going to come? Because the Bengals suck. And their season's over too. But as far as what Malika said about fire everybody, I agree. And I don't even, here's how I feel about the entire operation. I think Berg Nighthill has to get out of football completely. He doesn't need to be a part of it. He just needs to sell the stadium and sell the PSLs. And if Amy does something and she doesn't want to answer for it, then he answers the questions. That's what I think his job should be. I think they need to get rid of Brinker, get rid of Rand, get rid of all the people in the front office. And I think they need to hire an experienced football person, and they need to put the football person in charge and then let the football person decide what to do with Callahan and the coaching staff. If the Thomas Dimitrov, the experienced football person, Rick Spielman, Mark Dominant, whomever, if they decide, interview them all, pick which one you like the best, because I know none of them are going to screw it up that bad. And then if they want Callahan, keep him. And if not, fire him too. That's where I sit. But I agree. And you need to start over at quarterback. Let's go to Cedric, who's up next on the program. Thank you for calling on a Titans Monday. Cedric, go ahead.
Stillman, this is your fault about where we are. You had the whole Nashville thinking we need to hire an offensive coach back during this thing. And you talked about Bobby Slowick and this bum Brian Callahan. And look at the tweet, man. I said we're screwed. Man, listen, man, get rid of this clown. Attitude reflects leadership. We're poorly coached. We're undisciplined. And that's exactly what this bum Callahan is. He can't coach his way out of a wet paper sack. The schemes are terrible, and everybody keeps talking about Levis missing Chig. I ain't even sure Chig ran the right route, man. He wasn't even supposed to be over there. You got two guys in the same location. Poor design. Everything's terrible, man. Burn down the whole damn thing, man. And hell, bring in Justin Fields. I don't care who we bring in, man. Just bring in somebody, man. I'm sick of watching this crap, Stillman. This is your fault, man. And even back me up, bro. I got to go, Stillman. Bye.
How's it my fault?
You wanted the tight pant quarterback guru latte drinking guy.
First of all, what did I want 1 year ago today? What did I beg for?
1 year ago today?
Yes, when the Titans were in this state last year.
I don't know.
I begged that they cleaned house. And I got called every name in the book. I was a racist. You can't fire a general manager 1 year in, Jared. I'm like, I don't think you should be able to fire a general manager when he's in first place. But apparently you can. But I said after last year, I knew that whole Amy, Rand, Vrabel, we all love each other, slap each other on the ass. I knew that was never going to work. And Vrabel was undermining Rand every opportunity he got. Whether it was with I didn't say Levis was starting with Ian Rappaport, or whether it was if the best night of your life's the NFL draft, you probably didn't have a very good career. Again, every opportunity Vrabel got, he took a crack. Every single one of them. And so the report I think Diana had was that Vrabel told Amy, let's make Rand Carthon the assistant general manager instead of the GM, and Amy got all mad about it. So this time last year, I said, hey, it's time. It's time to clean house. But, Jared, that's not fair. The NFL's not fair. Rand Carthon signed up to work a job working with Mike Vrabel. So if you decide, well, no, let's see what Rand can do with his coach and you're promoting it. And I didn't think last year he deserved a promotion. And I didn't think he did a very good job last year. And yet they promoted him or demoted him, whatever you want. I mean, they, again, whatever. Like, that was their decision, and I was against it vehemently. I take no responsibility for the fact that they hired a coach. And, I mean, hey, everyone kept telling me, give Rand a chance. Give him another chance, Jared. Like, I'm just saying. Give him another chance, Jared. And so we gave him a chance, and it's worse this year than it was last year when we were promised it was all going to be better. Remember, Amy said that was unacceptable. More of your phone, 615-737-1025, which is our phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. I can't save this any longer. I have got to tell you the moment of the day yesterday where I begged for it. I asked for it. I was praying to the football gods for it. I got it, and I laughed my ass off. We'll get to that coming up next. This week's best deal is 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. 312 Pizza Company serves the best pizza in town, as well as Chicago-style eats like Chicago dogs, Italian beef sandwiches, and more. Check them out at 371 Monroe Street in Germantown, or order takeout online at 312pizzacompany.com. 312pizzaco.com. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get half off a $30 gift card to 312 Pizza Company while supplies last.
This is it for Tennessee. 4th down and 10. And this one is blown dead. A flag down on the far side of the field.
False start. Offense, number 78. 5-yard penalty, 4th down.
The bugaboo all year bites the Titans at the worst possible time. Another penalty for the team that has the most penalties per game in the NFL this season.
So I was watching the game, and the Titans had an opportunity to go down the field, and they tried to win, and they couldn't get it to NWI. And again, I was sitting there, and I thought I was watching New England 2.0, where you won the New England game, and you got nothing out of it except you fell from picking, I think, number 2 in the draft. You fell to picking like number 6 in the draft. And I was like, no. And then Brian Callahan had tears in his eyes after the Patriot game. And he was like, I needed that one bad. We beat the worst team in football by 3 points in overtime, but we were right. Oh, I needed it. And I was like, oh, God. Oh, Lord. Oh, no. So I see the Titans driving down the field. And I'm thinking, oh, God, they're going to score. They're going to win the game. And then tomorrow, I'm going to be like, oh, great. Now you're picking 9th in the draft, and you've won 4 games. And they're going to say, we got positive momentum, Jared. I'm like, oh, here we go. And I thought there was one person on the field, Ian, that I could point to, that I could count on yesterday.
Levis.
No. PT.
Oh, yes. PT, of course. Never fails.
Nicholas Petit Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
And I'm sitting here saying, all right, PT, where are you when I need you? And on 4th down, Ian, can we play that cut one more time? On 4th down, I'm sitting there thinking, come on, PT. Where are you, PT? Where is that strip sack? Where is that egregious mistake? Come on, Nick. And then we get this.
This is it for Tennessee. 4th down and 10. And this one is blown dead. A flag down on the far side of the field.
False start. Offense, number 78. 5-yard penalty, 4th down.
The bugaboo all year.
Oh, PT.
Bites the Titans at the worst possible time.
The bugaboo all year, PT. And I'm like, thank you, PT. Because I knew they weren't completing a 4th and 15. Because I knew that they could. I knew PT and Latham couldn't hold in pass protection for the amount of time that it would take for the Titans receivers to get 15 yards down the field. And they did not, and they lost the game. Thank you, PT. And I did. I laughed my ass off. Because if there's anything about this that truly encapsulates the incompetence of this organization in this season, it's PT. It's a guy who was not good as a rookie, who was even worse in his second year. But Jared, he missed half the year with the gambling suspension. Yeah, that's a bad thing. It's not a good thing. And the Titans went into the offseason and they went into the draft, and I kept saying, don't do it. But we think, Jared, and Bill Callahan will fix it. I'm like, oh, God. Then they get to OTAs. All right, let's see how PT's doing. He's not out there because he's so unreliable, couldn't get out there for practice. So then training camp starts, and they felt good about PT, and they felt good about Duncan, and they felt good about Ojukwu, and I knew that was all bullcrap because those were the same guys they tried last year, and they all stunk, and I don't care. Bill Callahan's not Jesus. He can't turn water to wine, and I knew it. And so I'm watching it, and the PT finally gets out there, and he still stinks. And they're telling Corey Curtis during the preseason, we feel good at right tackle. And Bill Callahan said it, Jared. And I'm like, okay. And that has ruined their entire season. And again, you can't be good without a right tackle. I learned it on the first day of football school from the great Floyd Reese. And yet, what have the Titans done about it? Is there somebody else playing right tackle? Did they make a trade for somebody? Did they sign somebody after roster cutdown day like Brian Callahan said they could during the offseason? No, they did not. Have they tried anybody else out there? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, they got back the starting right tackle from the What's Going Down episode of That's My Mama, Leroy Watson, and he was inactive. So they're just going to keep running PT out there. And you think you're going to get different results. And if that's the case, it's because you're incompetent. Because I knew all along PT couldn't do it. But Bill Callahan and Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan and Chad Brinker's Analytics, they said PT could do it, Jared. False start on 4th down. And you know why he got it, right? He got a false start because he's worried about the pass rusher, whether it's Walker or Allen. He's like, I'm going to have to cheat up a little bit. There was one where Latham jumped like 3 seconds before the snap. They didn't call it. Again, you got to cheat a little bit when you can't keep up with the other team's pass rushers. Let's go to Kevin, who's up next on Brian Callahan's been waiting very patiently. Kevin, go ahead.
Hey there. Can you hear me, Jared?
Yes, go.
All right. Yeah. I heard TD in the press conference on the previous show, just trying to throw a, some type of motivating factor for the next game. Question to Brian Callahan about, hey, you ramped up, for the Cincinnati game, to kind of get back at your old team. And I was just quite surprised that Brian's basically like, no, just a regular old game, So, I don't know what's opposite of losing the locker room. I feel like the coach has just lost his motivation to get his team going, So I didn't know what you felt about that.
All the things that Brian Callahan has said and done over the last 2 days, that answer where he said, no, I don't have any ill will towards anybody at Cincinnati. They were great to me. It's just another game on Sunday, but I really appreciate everything that we went through. That is the least of my problems.
Yeah, but, you're looking at a motivation for the next season for your coach to, you got players that are working hard, and trying. And it just seems to me like it's a kind of a no-brainer if, any player that goes up against their old team. I mean, at minimum, you want to flog them and win the game. And Brian,
yeah, but
just
that's hey, Ryan Tannehill used to be the quarterback of the Dolphins. The Dolphins then thought that Ryan Tannehill was no good anymore, so they wanted to get rid of him. So Ryan Tannehill wanted to prove that, hey, you shouldn't have gotten rid of me. What's Brian Callahan trying to do? Prove that they should have fired Zach Taylor and made him the head coach?
Well, it's just a lack of fire, I mean, it just seems like a logical thing that you'd want to go.
Again, let me tell you this, Kevin, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. Thank you for your call. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Motivation is not a concern I have with Brian Callahan. I think Brian Callahan wants to be a great head coach. I just don't know if he can do it. I just don't know if he can be mean enough and hold people accountable enough to be a great head coach. I mean, again, Ian, the positive things that he said, this was his opening statement after the game yesterday, where they scored 6 points and lost to the worst team in the NFL with the 32nd ranked defense. And this is what he got up there and said after the game.
A lot of positive things, disappointed in the outcome, but our defense played their tails off today. I thought we covered well on special teams. They were challenged to not let them start outside the 30. We never let them do that. We played great run defense for most of the game. And then at the end of the day, we needed to score in the red zone. We were 0 for 2 down there, and that's the difference in a tight ball game, in a divisional game. And that's you got to score touchdowns down there, and we didn't. So we're 0 for 2, and that's the difference in the ball game. Again, I thought there was a lot of positive things. We put ourselves in position and didn't execute when we had to have it the most, which is down there tight. Again, I'm disappointed in the outcome, certainly. But at the end of the day, we didn't do enough to win again. So go ahead.
So it was funny because I get the notification on my phone on Twitter when the Titans press conference is starting, and then I click it and it comes up. And so I didn't hear that first part until later. And I clicked it, and the first question was from Paul. And Paul was like, how were there positive things in the game when you scored 6 points against the worst team in the league? And I did have a good little chuckle about that one. But again, that's what I'm worried about with Brian Callahan, is that Brian Callahan is too much sunshine, too much glass is half full. I'm worried he's too nice of a guy to be a head coach. I really believe that. I'm starting to believe that. And I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he ends up being a good coach because I'm rooting for him. But his answer about the Cincinnati game, that is the least of my problems with this football team. I mean, should the coach be motivated for the Cincinnati game? I mean, he should be motivated to not get fired. That's how I view it. That was not a problem I had. We did good things yesterday. That is a problem that I had. 615-737-1025, our phone number on the program, 615-737-1025. Also, yesterday, there was something that I heard that I just, quite frankly, I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it yesterday. Didn't make a difference in terms of how I feel. But it's starting to become the Titan way. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
So 1 second on the clock. Expect some type of Hail Mary play here by the Titans. But Hines Allen is hurt. Josh Hines Allen just absolutely crushed Will Levis. And Levis is grabbing his right shoulder, which was an injury that cost him 3 games earlier this year.
Yeah, he comes down really hard on his shoulder. J.C. Latham just beat completely.
So that was the comical, I couldn't believe that it happened play yesterday, and I don't blame Levis for that. But it was obvious when Levis got thrown to the ground, it was obvious that he was hurt. And I saw Levis grab his shoulder, and it was a bad first half for Levis. And I really was like, oh, no, because if Levis gets hurt, then he's going to be out. You know, again, last time he got hurt, he was out for like a month and a half outside of that Indy game. And if Levis is out for a month, then he's out for the season. And that's the last thing that I wanted. Because if Levis is out for the year, what's going to happen is the Titans are going to convince themselves, well, we didn't get a fair shake to see if Levis could go. And so, you know, we didn't really get a fair shake to see if he was the guy or not. And so instead of going out and getting somebody else to play quarterback next year, they were going to run it back with Levis. And I saw all this happen all at one time. Because I knew when he was grabbing his shoulder, it was either the AC joint or it was his collarbone. So then Levis comes back into the game. And I saw Jim Wyatt had tweeted out, you know, the one person who went to the game yesterday and said, hey, Mason Rudolph's warming up. And I'm like, oh no, we're going to be stuck with another offseason of is Levis the guy or not? And so when I saw Levis on the bench and Todd Torricelli, the head trainer, was talking to him and Levis was shaking his head like, yeah, I'm ready. I was like, okay. Levis is going back in. And if Levis goes back in the game, there's no excuse. We already did this once. If you're too hurt to play, tell everybody you're too hurt to play, pack it up, let the other guy get out there. If you think you can go and you think you can help the team, then go give it a shot. But we're going to hold you accountable for what you do or what you don't do. After the game was over, Levis was asked about the shoulder and everything else, and here's what he said.
You had any infections after the hit in the first? Yeah, I have a sprained AC joint, so I mean, I'm playing through. I've been playing through all year, and I made it worse through that hit. Shot it up, played through it. Still able to play, but not fun.
Oh, hey, I've got a sprained AC joint. I've been dealing with it all year, but I got it shot up to play through because I'm tough. But it certainly wasn't fun. It was very tough today. I don't want to hear your freaking excuses. I don't want to hear it. And there was another excuse Levis had on the NWI ball that, again, NWI should have caught. And, Ian, I don't know if we have the cut or not. I think I was fumbling through earlier. But it was something along the lines of, oh, gosh, you know, the one time that the rain starts to come down and the ball's a little slick and NWI doesn't. I'm like, I don't want to hear your freaking excuses. Deal with it. Tom Brady played in the snow and won a playoff game. And I don't remember Rich Gannon after the game saying, well, you know, we're in Oakland and it never snows out there, so we had to go all the way. This is the NFL. This is the NFL. And you are playing quarterback for a team whose fan base holds Steve McNair as the gold standard. You don't have to throw for 300 yards a game because Steve, even when he was league MVP, wasn't throwing for 300 yards a game. You don't have to throw for 4 touchdowns. You don't have to be Aaron Rodgers. You don't have to be Peyton Manning. But I don't ever remember Steve McNair getting up there saying, yeah, I had to shoot it up before the game, and so it was tough, and it was hard for me. And I mean, every time they play a game, it'd be like, yeah, Steve McNair had to stand up on the flight across the country because his back is in such bad shape he couldn't sit down. And then Steve played. And so when it comes to Levis, I don't want to hear your excuses. You scored 6 points against Jacksonville. I don't want to hear it. If there's a valid excuse, I'll make it. We're smart enough to be able to say, hey, Levis doesn't have a right tackle. Can't blame him for that. We're smart enough to say, oh, the ball hit the receiver in the hands and he didn't catch it. Don't blame him for that. We did that last week when they dropped 5 passes. And Levis didn't complete 50% of his balls, but we said it's okay because, again, they dropped the passes because we saw it. If there's an excuse to be made, Will Levis, we'll make it for you. Don't make it. Because what it sounds like to me is Will Levis wants everybody to know that I've been playing through this sprained AC joint all year because I'm tough for my team. And I don't want to hear it. I do not want your excuses. I want better. And instead, oh no, NWI, I mean the ball, it was slick and it came down and it was, so why didn't you see Chig? I don't want to hear your excuses. And that goes for everybody on this football team, but especially the quarterback. Because the quarterback's the leader. That's like Ryan Tannehill after the Bengals game. Gosh, we thought we were going to go down there and win. I don't want to hear that. I want accountability. And when you say, oh, it was slick out there, we dropped the ball, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I mean, it's about shot up my shoulder. I want everybody to know, got a little juicy juice because, hey, I'm tough. The tough guys let everybody else do the talking for them. The tough guys, we see it. And the other thing, too, about Steve McNair, when it came to playing through the pain, you want to know what he did that Will Levis didn't do yesterday? He won those games. He didn't lose them. 615-737-1025. Chris says, serious question, Jared. What quarterback do you think could play behind this offensive line? I will be so glad when Levis goes to a good team. Now, look, I agree. I think this offensive line's atrocious. And I was saying that all offseason, and I kept telling the right tackle story, and you all kept getting mad at me for telling the right tackle story. But I think there are a lot of quarterbacks that could have thrown for more than 160 yards against the 32nd ranked pass defense yesterday. As far as I'm concerned. So this idea of like, I mean, who could do better? Let's see. Everybody can throw for 100. The other guy, Mac Jones, again, would have played better yesterday, quarterback of the Titans. Mac Jones did play better yesterday, quarterbacking Jacksonville. And you can get mad at it all you want and say, no, he threw 2 interceptions, but just know, he engineered a fourth quarter comeback drive. He threw for 220 yards. He had a higher QBR than Levis. He threw for 7.1 yards attempt, and he did something that Levis can't seem to do, which is Mac Jones at some point, whether it was the Jacksonville coaches that got to Jones, he realized, let's just throw the ball to Brian Thomas every play. Let's just do that. And Levis couldn't do it. But Levis, I mean, he made some good excuses. It rained yesterday. And maybe that comes from the head coach. Because remember our training camp when he and Calvin Ridley couldn't connect? And it was hot outside. So you can't play when it's hot outside and you can't play when it rains. Maybe they're angling to all be here for the new stadium where there's a dome. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 on the program. Coming up next, I said Brian Callahan was safe after the Texan game. I thought he was because I thought that game meant so much. A lot of fans are angry at the coach. Should they be? Should Brian Callahan be on the hot seat? We'll discuss next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Titans Monday. Titans fall to the Jags 10-6 yesterday, losing to the worst team probably in the NFL. And for a team that, again, let's keep it real. We knew the Titans weren't going to the playoffs, but they were trying to preach improvement. The Titans are trying to justify what they told us was going to be almost this next level approach. The Titans at the end of the year decided to point the finger, whether it was Amy or Amy's lieutenants, decided to point the finger in the direction of Mike Vrabel to say, he did it. Blame Vrabel. And there was a lot of that was seeping around the entire organization the entire offseason, that it was all Vrabel's fault. Now, I never thought it was all Vrabel's fault, but I did think it was time for a change. In comes Brian Callahan. He's nice. Mike Vrabel's mean. He tells you who's injured. Mike Vrabel won't tell you anything he doesn't have to. He's an offensive guy. Vrabel like Todd Downing. And this was supposed to bring the Legion of Change. Remember what Rand said? Hunting together isn't the same as hunting at the same time. They talked about the analytics and how they were going to be on the cutting edge and they were going to be. They scored 6 points against the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL at home and lost yesterday. Again, I don't know if it's fair to pin all of this on Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan is not the general manager. He's not the president of football operations. He didn't draft the guard who sucks with the 11th overall pick. He didn't trade away A.J. Brown. He didn't do any of those things. He wasn't even a part of the group that decided to pick Will Levis. And yet, there are some bars that no matter what the situation is, you kind of have to rise above. And beating Jacksonville at home is one of them. And so I think the problem with this team starts with the owner, not with the head coach. I think the general manager and his president of football operations, who's in charge of whom, I don't really know, but I think collectively they're a pair of snake oil salesmen who use big words and tell everybody how great things are going to be, and they don't know if the football is pumped or stuffed. And I don't think that's Brian Callahan's fault. I don't think Brian Callahan really had a whole lot of advice or really anybody with experience to give him a clue what to do, except for his dad, who quite frankly wasn't a very good head coach himself. He's a rookie head coach with a rookie special teams coordinator, with a rookie offensive coordinator, with a rookie defensive coordinator, with, again, a GM who I don't even know what he's good at. But you can't lose Jacksonville. Can't lose that game. Against the worst team in the NFL, the worst defense in the NFL, at home, they had already been eliminated from the playoffs. You technically had not been eliminated from the playoffs. With a backup quarterback after their star quarterback, granted, I use that term loosely. He's paid like a star. He's probably not a star. Got decapitated last week. You can't lose that game. And you certainly can't lose it by scoring 6 points. So there yesterday and today has been an avalanche of anger pointed in the direction of the coach. I've heard the phone calls across the shows. I've seen on Twitter. I got text messages. I got Brian Callahan is not the guy. Brian Callahan is in over his head. Brian Callahan can't coach. Brian Callahan. And every time I hear somebody say something to me about Brian Callahan, I get defensive. And I think to myself, could Vince Lombardi coach with Rand Carthon picking the players? I don't know if he could. I mean, again, Brian Callahan, not a personnel guy, Never been a personnel guy. That's not his job. Chad Brinker, he don't know if it's pumped or stuffed. Amy, Burke, Nia, they don't know ball. They're the reason that it's okay to fire a general manager at 9-5 or at 7-5 in first place after winning 2 straight division titles because you get mad at it, which makes no sense. So when it comes to should Brian Callahan be on the hot seat, I am very defensive. I also put a giant asterisk when it comes to Callahan being on the hot seat, because the way I view it is they should clean house and get a new general manager, and I am not sticking this coach on the next general manager. I am giving that general manager the option to keep Brian Callahan or the option to go get his own coach, and I'd be willing to live with either one. But the point I guess I'm trying to make here is, as much as I can yell and scream about Rand, as much as I can yell and scream about Chad, as much as I can yell and scream about Amy, as much as PT sucks, as much as Levis, misses a wide open Chicaconquo in the end zone, there's just some bad days you can't have. It's like me on the radio. I've had some bad days, especially over the last year. You guys don't know this, but I call it autopilot. It's a crazy thing I can do where if I'm having a bad day or if my focus is not on the show, I can literally come up with topics, do a segment, and then in the commercial break, just put my head down and not think about anything until we come back from break. I don't know how I can do it, but I can. But the one thing I always tell myself is, regardless of what's going on in my personal life, whether it's my radio partner passing away and dealing with the grief of that, whether it's, having my life go in one direction and then the next day, all of a sudden it's boom, going in another direction. And it happened. Like, what do you think I did about it? But it is what it is. Regardless of what, my job is to put that to the side and to get on the air and to give an entertaining product to the person that's either on the way home, listening on the app, whatever. Because that's the job. And when it comes to Brian Callahan, it's his job to win that game yesterday. I know it's his job to win every game, but we don't expect him to go out there and beat the Chiefs. And we shouldn't expect him to beat the Chiefs. They played the Chargers a couple weeks ago, got housed. They shouldn't beat the Chargers. And nobody's putting that on Brian Callahan. I thought it was ridiculous, the Buffalo game, when people were just hammering Callahan. And I said, well, how is he supposed to beat the Buffalo Bills with Mason Rudolph at quarterback? Like, the problems are not the coach. The problems are above the coach. And I still believe that. If you change the coach and you didn't change anybody above the coach, I don't think you'd get any different results. Vrabel couldn't win with these people. But Vrabel could beat the Jags. Yesterday, that was totally inexcusable. And I don't buy into this hot seat stuff that everybody else, you can't fire a coach after 1 year. Why not? Why can't I fire a coach after 1 year? Sometimes you interview somebody, you think they're good at a job, you're around them for a month, and you're like, this guy sucks. If that's the case, why waste another year of your life? Fire the coach. It's not like there's not precedent in the NFL. Arizona fired Steve Wilkes after 1 year. Carolina fired Frank Reich when he didn't even complete a year. And San Francisco fired Jim Tomsula and Chip Kelly after 1 year each. So I don't believe this. You can't fire a coach after 1 year. I think that's total bullcrap. And I still don't think Callahan is the problem when it comes to the Tennessee Titans. I think those problems are above him. But you can't lose to Jacksonville. You can't score 6 points against the worst defense in the NFL. He picked the wrong day to have a bad day. And it's not whether or not it's fair because he didn't pick this quarterback, or whether or not it's fair because the GM and the president don't know if the ball's pumped or stuffed, whether or not it's fair because the owner doesn't know how to run a football team. That's irrelevant. Even with all of those issues, he still should have been able to beat this Jacksonville team. He still should have been able to get the ball in from the 2-yard line. And if Levis can't do it, get somebody else in, because I bet they can get the ball in from the 2-yard line. So, again, I'm not saying they should fire Brian Callahan, but there are a lot of people out there today that are saying, you got to fire the coach. And it's hard to defend Brian Callahan when he had a bad day against the team that you can't have a bad day against. Again, what's the bar here? The bar should at least be to beat the worst team in the league. And yesterday he couldn't do it. I felt like Mike Mularkey was completely disrespected when he made the playoffs, won a playoff game, and got fired. Because what was the bar? Team hadn't been to the playoffs in 10 years. So what's the bar you expect the coach to pass? What's the bar here? Brian Callahan took over a 6-win team from Mike Vrabel. They're going to win less than 6 games this year, and they just lost to the worst team in the league. How do you defend that? So that's where I am on Callahan after yesterday's. If you're somebody that thinks he can't coach, it's hard for me to argue, because that's a game that any coach in the league worth their salt should find a way to win. And he couldn't do it. He picked a bad day to have a bad day. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Plus, something we've talked about as a problem with Brian Callahan, apparently, is something that Brian Callahan is now all of a sudden out of nowhere trying to change. And I think this is a huge red flag. A huge red flag. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
You feel certain there is a future
Oh, what do you mean?
for you?
Oh yeah, I don't worry about that stuff. That's not for me to worry about. I do everything every day to do my job the best way I possibly can. I put everything into this as much as there's nobody that thinks about how to build this program and what we need to do more than I do. And so yeah, I don't worry myself with anything other than that at this point. And again, there's things that I can't control, and so I don't focus on that. I focus on what it's going to take to build a program that and build the foundation to a program that's going to allow us to have success in the future. And that's my only focus. It's the only thing I think about.
I'll tell you this, Brian Callahan's a lot better to answer those questions than Vrabel was. You know, I don't know if you remember last year when Vrabel was asked about the questions about wanting to be back and all of that. And Vrabel was like, I mean, yeah, I want to be here if we can do it right. And if we can, you know, go and would do it with Ran and Chad and A-Rob. And it was like, yeah, Vrabel's not answering these questions very well. Whereas Callahan's like, oh, yeah, I can't worry about whether or not what's going to happen above me. I just have to do the best job I could do. And it's like, good answer, Brian Callahan. But there is something Brian Callahan's trying out that I had to roll my eyes at yesterday when I heard them talking about it on the CBS broadcast. So, again, I like Brian Callahan. I sat down with Brian Callahan the day after he was hired. I told Brian Callahan, I said, hey, man, here's the deal. I said, I'm the mean guy in town. So I just, whatever I think I'm going to say, and you may not like it, but here's my card. If you have a problem, call me. I always tell coaches and general managers, I'm like, hey, if you got a problem, call. They never call, but it gives them the option of, hey, you can call and you can yell at me. And I'm never going to sit there and say, like, Coach called yesterday and we got into it. But they want them to know, like, hey, there's something you don't like, you can argue it. I said, look, I'm going to say whatever I think. If I don't like something, I'm going to say it. And of course, like every coach, he's like, yeah, that's fine. Totally understand. I got it. You know, whatever. I like Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan is a good guy. I will tell you that right now. With total sincerity, everything you see, that is who he is. But when he didn't throw Jeffrey Simmons out of training camp practice, I asked him that day, I said, why didn't you throw him out of practice? It's like, I didn't think I needed to. Like, okay. And then over the course of the year, there have been these moments where it's come up where I'm like, is he too nice? You know, Levis throws an interception against the Seahawks in joint practices. And it's like, yeah, we'll learn from that. It'll be fine. And every time they had a bad day on defense or on offense in camp, it was, well, Denard's defense is really good. And I was like, is he too nice? And they're like, no. He'll rip somebody's ass when he needs to. I'm like, yeah, but there's a difference between holding people accountable and, you know, constantly being on somebody's ass. And I actually think that constantly being on somebody's rear end is probably the better way to go about it. It's like Michael Jordan said, like, I'm here to win. And that's why he treated people the way he did. So we've talked about it over and over again. And yet every time the Titans screwed something up this year, it's like, no, I was really proud of him. That was a good thing. We'll get it figured out. Colt Anderson doesn't suck. And so yesterday on the CBS broadcast, after getting to 3-9 and being one of the most penalized teams in the league, Jason McCourty and the broadcast crew told us, no, Brian Callahan, he is trying to change.
And a flag is down.
False start. Offense, number 78. 5-yard penalty, second down.
Common theme for Tennessee, penalties, especially against the offense. That's the 5th false start this year against Petit Frere.
Listen, we talked to Brian Callahan about the penalties that the Titans were going through and how they've struggled. First in the NFL when it comes to penalties. He said his voice changed with the guys this week. He was a little bit more stern with his tone and tried to get them to understand it's their own mistakes that's holding them back from winning football games.
To go back to Callahan and the point Jason was making, Callahan told us he got after the guys this week, and Will Levis told us that the tone definitely changed with Callahan. And Callahan said that his demeanor is pretty consistent, but this week he had to show the team that he does have some bite. He was more intense, used some choice words with his team, and he thought the message was received well. We'll see how it plays out today for Tennessee.
Again, that way that read to me when I heard it was, no more Mr. Nice Guy. I've been nice all year long, and here we are at 3-9, and now I'm going to change my ways. So in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, Brian Callahan gave you a Band-Aid every time you got a boo-boo. Now he's trying to, I'm going to be tough now. And I don't think that's, I don't think that works. You know what I mean? I think that you can be somebody who is mean, and then as you get to know people, as they earn your respect, as they kind of become made men in the mob, and so you kind of ease up on them. I can promise you, Vrabel wasn't on Derrick Henry's ass the way he was on everybody else's. But I'm not sure you can go from everybody gets an A to now I'm going to grade you guys hard. And it sounds like that's what he's trying to do. And that just seems fake. And I feel like things like that never work. It's like, again, I don't know what kind of parent I'm going to be. And I hope I'm going to be a good parent, but I don't know.
I'm sure you will.
But the one thing that I can tell you I'm not going to be is I'm not going to be my child's friend first. That's just not, I'm not interested in that. Do I want my kid to like me as much as I like being around my dad? Yeah. But that's not going to be my first goal. And I can tell you, growing up, that wasn't my dad's first goal either. And I just think Brian Callahan's too nice. And I think this idea of, Callahan said this way, hey, no more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm like, yeah, it might be a little too late for a new first impression. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joey is up next on the play calling. Joey, thank you for waiting. Joey, go ahead.
Jared, appreciate your opinion. I don't always agree with you, but I appreciate the fact you state it and you support it. Ram Carthon, I've appreciated some of his picks, but I had high hopes for Latham, and then that Olay on the last play of the first half that almost got Levis killed. It's like, gosh, where are we getting these guys? But knowing how difficult it is to know when you're hiring somebody, I've made those mistakes. I'm sure others have too. But Callahan, I was excited when we got him with what had happened in Cincinnati. And then throughout the year, I see some play calling. What in the world is he thinking? And I'll admit, I did not have the benefit of watching the first half, the end of the first half, where we've got the ball at the 4, we get a penalty, we go back to the 14, we receive a penalty, the PI, they put it back at the 4, we run the ball and get 2 yards. We got 3 plays to get 2 yards. What happened to, I'm going to impose my will on you with Tony Pollard and run the ball up the worst defense in the league's throat and get a touchdown there? Instead, they throw 3 passes, and then they complain on the 4th down when, I missed the guy. I didn't see him. He was wide open. Thank you, and I'll hang up.
Sure. I'm going to comment on the play calling because I'm not one to just constantly badmouth the play calling and to go crazy about it, because I think there's a lot of things about play calling that we don't know. I think there's a lot of things that go into play calling that I'm not going to sit here and say, none of us are smart enough to understand. But I think there are is that what they called? Is that what they ran? Did this guy do what he was supposed to do? And then also it's like, this play wasn't designed to score a touchdown. It was to set up this play later in the game. And so there are different. So I don't get into the individual play calls, though sometimes I do think some of these things are stupid. What I do think is I look at game plans. And the thing that Brian Callahan has done a couple times this year are, I'll understand the game plan. I'll understand what he's thinking. And then he will make a decision that is so far from that game plan, kind of that core principle and core belief, that it doesn't make any sense to me. Today is a Titans Monday. So if you tune into this program today, there's a pretty good chance, whether you're getting in the car or turning on the app or whatever, whether it is 4:27 or whether it's 2:16 or whether it's 5:41, there's a really, really, really good chance we're going to be talking about the Titans. And you know that because that's what we do on Titans Monday. If the Predators were in the Western Conference Final, which has never seemed further away than it probably does right now, you know that's what we'd be talking about. If you were to tune in today and you were to hear us talking about Juan Soto's contract, I think you'd be kind of shocked. I think you'd think, well, Juan Soto is something that, it's something that I guess is big in the sports world, but don't really understand in Nashville, Tennessee, if anybody really gives a rat's ass about Juan Soto's contract. And the answer to that, by the way, is no, they don't. Brian Callahan's game plan, I thought from the start, was obvious. We're going to run the football up the middle because we're not going to let the best part of Jacksonville's defense, their two pass rushers, one who was taken number 1 in the draft and another who was taken number 7 in the draft and is probably better than the one that was taken number 1 in the draft, Josh Hines-Allen. We're not going to let Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen take over the game. And if we drop back and throw it 37 times, that's exactly what's going to happen. And you guys know the state of the Titans tackles. Latham at times is good for a rookie. He's probably not a good left tackle, at least not yet. PT is a disaster at right tackle, and we all know that. So I think they look, because it doesn't matter which one they put on which, right? Like if they put Josh Allen on PT, he's going to murder him. If they put Trayvon Walker on him, they're going to murder him. And we all know that. So what we're going to do is we're going to run the ball up the middle. So now you're not coming at Will Levis. You can't pin your ears back and come after him because at best it's going to be for you. At best it's going to be 3rd down and 4. So you can't pin your ears and come after him. And I'm not leaving these guys on an island to pass protect against top number 1 draft choices. And then he runs the Hail Mary before the half. So with 1 second to go at midfield, Brian Callahan, whose game plan has been, let's protect the tackles, which makes sense. Ian, back me up on this. Does it make sense to you if the game plan is to protect the tackles against those two pass rushers that you would try to avoid putting Levis in drop back situations without help for the tackles?
I mean, I guess, even though the defense is terrible.
But if there's any good part of their defense, it's those two guys.
I guess.
So what you're going to do is you are not going to let that wreck the game. It makes sense. Think about it like intentionally walking the other team's best hitter. It's like Greg Maddox said, Barry Bonds was the easiest guy to pitch to because if he came up in a situation where it mattered, you just walk him. That's what they did. But then right before the half with 1 second to go, you're going to ask Will Levis to drop back with no help for the tackles, and you're going to have him launch the ball 55 yards down the field, and it's going to take 5 seconds, 10 seconds for your receivers to get down the field so Levis can unload a ball down there so that somebody could catch a Hail Mary. Well, that doesn't make any sense. You're going to isolate your tackles against their pass rushers when that is the game plan, is to not do that? So Brian Callahan, again, I'm not going to question the play calling, but what I am going to question is some of these moments where I'm like, what were you thinking? Like, what could you possibly have been thinking there? And that Hail Mary before the half was one of them. You know, Green Bay, when the offense was doing nothing and it was 4th and 2 and they booed, you know, because the offense was stinking. And so, boo, as the offense goes off the field and Callahan calls timeout and runs the offense back out there. Like, what are you thinking? 4 shots at Detroit from the 1 yard line, 4 shots against Jacksonville from the 2, and you don't run the ball? Like, what are you thinking? Those are the ones where I'll get on Callahan, where I'm like, I don't understand this. I don't, what are we doing here? And then his bozo offensive coordinator gets up there on Thursday, and he only makes things worse. Because he'll give you like this, well, you know, we think, well, possibly, you know, if we go this, that, you know, we, so on, so forth, whatever, etc. And I'm like, okay, I can't. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program, 615-737-1025. Now, I did say Brian Callahan was safe 2 weeks ago. And I don't just want to walk that back. But I do, like, does the Houston win for the owner? Does that still have its juice? We'll discuss. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. I love Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Hiller takes great care of my home. In fact, they will be here tomorrow morning. They are the best. Hiller's Cash for the Holiday promotion is back, and they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems or a new whole home generator. Or get a $250 Visa gift card when you buy a new tankless water heater. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today by visiting happyhiller.com. Take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning this month, too, and there's no better time to take care of your home before the holiday guests arrive. Make sure your systems are in great shape and take advantage of some free cash as well. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the President's Falls of Vandy. Hiller, call that fish truck today.
talked a lot about how this is an impatient league. Knowing that, how do you not let that affect your confidence, or does it affect your confidence at all when the results aren't what you want them to be, and you know that in the past that has led to bad things?
Yeah, I don't think it affects my confidence. I think this is not a it's not a very forgiving job. It's not one for the faint of heart. There's a lot of things that you have to be supremely confident in yourself. You have to be supremely confident in what you're doing every day, and it's very, very, very challenging, especially when things aren't going well. But I don't ever waver in what I believe. I don't waver in what I think is the right things to do, and that's all I can really control. And if you let your confidence dip, that's usually where things can go wrong. You have to find ways to pick yourself up. You got to get back to work. You got to dust yourself off, and you go attack again. And that's really the only way you can survive in this league. And the patience part is what it is. It's a results-based business, and I fully understand that. And that's just the way it's always been and always will be. So you just keep attacking it every week, and you keep doing the things that you believe in, and you keep pushing forward and try to get things to turn.
That's Brian Callahan saying, like, hey, man, I'm not getting into this hot seat talk. Like, I'm just here. I'm just doing my job. And I think that's the right approach. So I did say a couple weeks ago when they beat the Texans, and I heard about Amy in the locker room with tears in her eyes and an Oiler belt buckle, and she got the game ball. And I said, I think that takes Brian Callahan. If he was on a hot seat, that takes him off the hot seat, because I know how important that game is to Amy. Because I remember last year when they lost to the JV Texans, Mike Vrabel wore the Bum Phillips hat and they wore the Oiler gear. And I'm like, Amy is not going to like that. And remember, a couple weeks back, Amy had given Vrabel the vote of confidence through Diana Rossini. And then they went to Monday Night Football. They beat the Dolphins on the road. And then they lost to the Texans. And you know how big that is to Amy. So I know how big beating the Texans in Houston after Hannah McNair, who, again, as ugly as I think Cal McNair is, I think Hannah McNair is very pretty. And Hannah McNair talked all that trash, and that's a big deal to Amy. Not a big deal to me, probably not a big deal to you, but it's a big deal to her. But then I started wondering yesterday, does the Jacksonville loss, with how bad the Jags are, does that undo the goodwill that I do kind of feel like Callahan built by winning that Texan game? And I don't know the answer. All I know is what I would do. And if I own the team beating the Texans in Houston, where Kyami Fairbairn missed a 28-yard kick, that wouldn't get my panties off or anything like that. But when it comes to what the Adams care about, they do care about winning at Houston. And so there's a little bit of a difference between the two. But for me, Brian Callahan's job security is tied to the next guy who runs this football team. But again, I don't know. I can't tell you if that's the same for Amy or not. And if the win at Houston was so monumental because it was personal, is the loss to Jacksonville so bad that it overcomes the good from the win of the Houston game, which was personal? 615-737-1025. One texter into the text line says, I listened to PK's podcast last night where he answers questions and addresses comments. By the way, I listen to PK's podcast after the games too, and my girlfriend thinks it is the most boring thing every single week. It's literally PK just sitting in front of a computer being like, well, yeah, crazy Dan, you want to change the wide receivers, but the problem is the offensive line. And every week she's like, get this off the TV. But I do find it fascinating. But he says, I listened to the Paul Karski podcast where he takes questions and addresses comments. He talked about how the Titans could be the best team. Then he went on to talk about Levis, Latham, Skoronski, Ridley, and others and how much progress they've shown lately. He's still impressed with Levis, and his progression includes yesterday's performance. All I've seen is Levis regressing to the mean, which is a mediocre backup quarterback at best. The others didn't have anything but average play. That happens on the morning show too. Why are these guys still being defended? By the way, oh my God, Ian. So I was listening to Joe this morning. Like, you know, this thing where Joe and Robbie will talk about Rand Carthon, but neither of them will say whether or not he should be fired or not fired. I had to get on Joe. It was bad.
Haven't they already said that they wouldn't fire them?
Well, but again, remember, it's like a daily update. It's like a daily heat check. And so I wanted to know today, after the Jags game, like, has Joe changed his mind? And the last segment today on Robbie and Rextra, I may need you to pull the audio from the last segment, Ian. The last segment, Joe was like, and if you're Amy, I mean, you should know that what Rand's doing. That I'm like, are you in or are you out on Rand Carthon, Joe? Now, to the texter's point about all the players on the team that Paul said were getting better, and I didn't hear that. I did listen to most of it, but I didn't hear that. Here's what I will say about the players on the team. Yesterday, I said to my dad, we were watching the game, and I said, who on this team is any good? Who's having a good season? And I think it was after PT did something, and they were like, another tough season for Petit Ferrer. And I was like, who's having a good season? And my dad was like, nobody on the team is having a good season except Nick Westbrook-Akine and Nick Folk.
And Pollard.
And Pollard's having an okay
He's having
season.
a good season.
He's not having a good season. He's not going to get named to the Pro Bowl. He's not going to get close to being named to the Pro Bowl.
He's having a good season. Pro Bowl
Who
is a
on the
Pro
team
Bowl.
is having a Pro Bowl season?
Pro Bowl and good. What are we doing here? We're moving the goalposts.
Again, I mean, I'm talking about like a good, above expected. That Pollard is doing what is expected of him.
He's having a good season. I mean, he's having a good season. I think Hooker is having a fine season. The kicker, you said, right? And you said NWI, Nick Westbrook-Akine, he's having a good season. You'd have to struggle to find more. That's why you've only won 3 games.
I mean, I'm still not even convinced Hooker's having a good season. I mean, I think Hooker's out there, but he's not a bum, but I don't think he's doing anything special. I mean, how can we sit here and give Pollard all the Pollard fumbled the ball against the Texans 2 weeks ago?
Who got credit for the fumble?
Washington.
That was a Levis fumble.
Well, they technically charged it to Levis.
So it's a Levis fumble.
Exchange.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Fumbled the ball 2 of the last 3 weeks. And again, I mean, like Tony Pollard's fine. He's a running back. It's fine. By the way, when does Spears plan on being good? Been kind of waiting on that one too, by the way. But no, they're not having a good thing. No, they're not having.
Well, when you win 3 games, no one's having a good season. Yeah. I mean, what do you expect? Yeah.
Speaking of that,
couple.
Speaking of that, NWI yesterday. I do have a thought on that catch in the end zone. You know, the one where Brian Callahan and Will Levis said, well, the ball was a little slick. I do have a thought on that, which I want to get to next. Then we're right back to your phones. And maybe we'll have the audio of Joe talking around his Rand Carthon opinions. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
Now it's 4th down and 3. Levis to the end zone, and it is incomplete. Intended for Westbrook-Akine. And the Titans come up empty in the red zone with 1:11 to go. They do have all 3 timeouts, so we are not done yet.
And that's been the story of the game for them in the red zone, not being able to finish. Throws this behind Westbrook-Akine, goes up, to able to get 2 hands. Would have been a tough catch. Darnell Savage closing in on him, doing a really good job of forcing a tough catch as it's above his head and shoulders, trying to come away with it.
Okay, I got a couple thoughts on the NWI play right there yesterday. Number one, Levis could have thrown a better ball, but NWI should have caught it. You get your hands on the ball, you got to catch it. And I know NWI is not exactly Randy Moss, so when Randy Moss says, I always had a rule, if I get my hands on the ball, I got to catch it. I understand. By the way, Ian, I don't think that's a bad Randy Moss right there.
Not your worst impersonation, no.
I've got a rule. If I get my hands on the ball, I got to catch it. Again, that's what Randy Moss said.
Maybe a little too country,
NWI is
but
not
not
exactly Randy Moss. But NWI should have caught that ball. And yet, I'm so glad he didn't. Like when he didn't catch that ball and it was 4th down and it was incomplete, I said watching the game, and you know I love my Titans, I said, yes! And my dad and I high-fived, though my dad didn't high-five me very hard. I think he's got a hard time, rooting against the Titans. But I was so happy. And I'm almost convinced that the way NWI is programmed is that if he thinks, like, his body always knows what's in the best interest of the Titans, and so he knew on that one subconsciously that it would be better off for them not to catch the ball and for them to lose to Jacksonville, and so he did. That's the best I got. Because that's a ball he should catch that I have come to appreciate NWI, Nick Westbrook-Akine, enough to know that, hey, I think when he goes up there to make this catch, he should make it. And yesterday, I was stunned he didn't. If anybody else had dropped that pass, if Chig had dropped that, I wouldn't have been surprised at all. But NWI, I mean, he was due a touchdown because he gets a touchdown a game. And he was there and he got it. And I thought there was a little something to that. One texter says, Jared, how likely do you think it would be successful to replace GM, all coaches, and have success? What is worse? What if it's worse? How awful would that be? So I can't worry about that. Chris Sanders does that all the time. We talk about this on the pregame show. And Chris will be like, well, but what if you hire somebody and it's worse? I'm like, number one, how can it be worse? You're the worst team in the league right now. You just lost to Jacksonville at home. But number two, again, you don't hire people with the expectation of what if this is worse than it was before. You go into it thinking, hey, there's a shot. That's why I look at this Rand thing and I don't worry about, well, could I do worse than Rand Carthon? Because, I mean, I guess technically I could. It'd be kind of hard, but I could. But I'm not likely to do that. I just know, in my opinion, Rand can't do the job. How likely is it that it's successful? Well, I mean, again, when the Titans went to Floyd Reese and Jeff Fisher, I would say that ultimately that was successful. It took some time, probably more time than any coach would get nowadays, but that was successful. When they went away from Floyd Reese for 2 years, they were good. And then once all the Albert Hainsworths and the Kevin Mawais and the Kyle Vandenbosches and the Cortland Finnegans and all the guys that Floyd Reese brought in here went away, team went to crap. Then when they went to Munchak, he wasn't very good. So they were about a 9-7 team with him for pretty much the duration. When Whisenhunt took over, it took 2 years for them to bottom out. Really, the first year, they were 2-14. Then they got Mike Mularkey in, and in the first year, they were 9-7. So I think if you get competence, the Commanders showed us, the Texans showed us, these other teams have showed us, you can get good. Like it's not 17 years away. I remember in 2015, that was Wisenhunt's last year. And I remember the Super Bowl that year. It was the Broncos and the Panthers, Peyton Manning's last game. And I watched that game and I watched those teams and I was thinking about the Titans who had Bleedy Ray Wilson as a starting corner at that point in time. And I just thought about how far away the Titans were from the two teams that were playing on TV. I'm like, God, they'll never be good enough to play with these teams. And a year later, the Denver Broncos came into town with Mariota at quarterback and the Titans beat them. So, again, you're never that far away in this league. So that's why I would say, I think, it's possible that they're good. And a lot better than, well, but what if it's worse than Ran? How could it possibly be worse? What, are they going to take a punter with the 11th pick instead of a guard who sucks? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, it's not with Amy the question of if, it's the question of a win. And the if is all dependent upon her. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Titans Monday. Titans losers to Jacksonville 10-6. Jacksonville entered the game as the worst team in the NFL. And they beat you with a backup quarterback. And they had the worst defense in the league. And they beat you. It's actually kind of funny, though maybe some of this stuff isn't that funny. I don't know. You make the call. But it is kind of funny to me because I was thinking about something from a while back. I was thinking about last year. And I was thinking about that god-awful season where 6 weeks into the season, you've gone to London and Ryan Tannehill was on crutches and they waved the white flag when they decided to trade Kevin Byard. They said they weren't, but they were. They were giving up on the year. And we were told next year will be better, Jared, $100 million in cap space. We're going to go get T. Higgins. We're going to have a high draft choice. I said, yeah, okay. You guys get excited about that. But it has been over a year that I have said if I owned the Titans, that I would hit the reset button. They played a game on the road at Jacksonville last year and got crushed. In fact, I think it was Calvin Ridley that did a lot of the crushing. They got beat at Jacksonville 34-14 on November 19th of 2023. And I said at 5 o'clock on that Titans Monday, a year and a half ago, well, I should say a year and a half ago, a year and a month ago, I said if I owned this team at the end of the year, I'd be prepared to clean house. That I would be getting rid of Rand, getting rid of Vrabel, getting rid of all of it, starting over, hiring a football guy, and it's time to move forward. And what was hilarious at the time was everybody told me, you can't do that, Jared. You can't fire a general manager after 1 year. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do? Nobody had a problem with firing Vrabel. They had a problem with firing Rand. I got called racist. It was, I know why you're going after the GM after 1 year. I'm like, guys, I'm not racist. I know what racism is. It ain't me. But I had seen enough to say, I don't want to give Rand a promotion. Let him hire a coach. Let him use a top 10 draft pick. Let him spend that money that you guys are all excited about. I've seen enough. And the Titans, give him a chance, Jared. And so when they lost to the JV Texans, and that game came on Sunday, December 17th, I said, that's the nail in the coffin. At the end of the year, I'm done with both of them. Done with Vrabel, done with Rand, starting over, blow it up. Again, you can't do that, Jared. Well, here we are, a year later, and this football team is worse. This quarterback is worse. The outlook of the team is worse. Derrick Henry's not on this team. You can't re-sign him and bring him back and have him lead your football team next year. At least this time last year, you could have. This team is worse this year than they were last year. We spent all day Friday talking about the 2-year anniversary of the day that she fired John Robinson. You are 9-26 since you fired John Robinson. Bad. Remember the good to great? Well, it's gone from it's okay to horrible. And now there's no denying it. So what should Amy do? And again, to me, the answer is simple. Clean house. But Jared, you can't fire a general manager 2 years into it. Well, I couldn't fire him last year. You guys told me let him cook. You're worse. You can't fire Brian Callahan. It's not fair to Brian Callahan. Life ain't fair. Here's the reality. And I was right about most of these things. I was right about Rand. I was right about Amy's decision to fire John Robinson. I was right about right tackle. I was right about Sam Darnold. So maybe we should listen to me. And here's the reality. If Amy really believes anything that she says in the brief appearances that she makes, and they're pretty much the same every time, whether she's sitting down with Mike Keith or she's in front of a microphone where she won't get asked any questions, it's kind of the same. I have high expectations for this team, and my goal is to bring Lombardi trophies to Nashville. Kind of the same every time. If she actually believes that, the longer she waits to hit the reset button is the longer it's going to take for this team to have any chance of getting good. I'm not promising you that if they fire Rand and Brian Callahan, that they will win the Super Bowl with the next guys they hire. Whether it is, like I want, an experienced football guy, Rick Spielman, Thomas Dimitrov, etc. Like, there's no guarantee they'll win the Super Bowl. Thomas Dimitrov got pretty close, but he didn't actually win it. But if Amy force feeds us another year of her people, because they're her people and her decisions, and let's not kid ourselves, that's the only reason they'd keep their jobs. If she had a quicker trigger on John Robinson and Mike Vrabel, where Mike Vrabel signed a contract extension in January of 22, January of 22, yes. January of 22 for Robinson and Vrabel. And Robinson was gone in December, and Vrabel was gone in January of 24. If she were to give Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon more time than she gave those two, it would only be because those were her decisions. Well, I picked them, so they must be good. If she force feeds us that again for another year, we'll be in the exact same position 1 year from now. Again, I can't promise that there's no chance it won't get better. But I was right last year, wasn't I? If they run it back, the Titans will be horrible. They will spend another $100 million in free agency this offseason. They will once again invest in the wrong players because they don't know what they're looking for. They will have used the 4th or 5th or 6th overall pick. When we don't really know if this current regime has any clue how to draft now. Again, I keep seeing people in the text line or people in the, I like Rand's draft picks. Which ones? Skoronski? Levis? Spears? I mean, right now it's Latham and Brownlee. Those are the only two that are punching at any rate above their weight. And Latham, it's starting to get a little shaky. If she brings back the same guys, it will be another lost season. That's what it'll be. So what she's got to do, and again, this isn't about Rand or Chad or Brian Callahan. This is about the future of the Titans. The future that she wants the same thing that I want, which is to be good again. She has to hit the reset button. If she hits the reset button now, we can hope that they can do what Robinson and Malarkey did, which were quickly turn the football team around. Give us something that in December of 2016, Ryan Suckup is kicking in Kansas City for a chance to make you a playoff contender. That's the hope. Look at the Commanders. They have hope. But if you keep playing the same record, you're going to hear the same song. And again, you can say whatever you want about the John Robinson firing or the job John Robinson was doing or whatever. But it was irrational and completely out of touch when she fired him in the middle of the season. That was a bad decision made by Amy. Then she decided that she was going to hire Rand Carthon and she was going to stick him with Mike Vrabel, even though Mike Vrabel didn't want to work with Rand Carthon. That was a bad decision. Even if Rand was a good general manager, that's a bad decision because Vrabel's already told you, I'm not going to respect this guy. So at that point, you either have to hire somebody Vrabel okays or you have to fire Vrabel. But you can't have it both ways. But she didn't think that. No, they'll work together. Bad decision. Then last year, when we were told all year there was no power struggle, there was no drama, there was nothing to see there, TD wrote a whole article. They brought him in the facility. Vrabel and Rand said they were best buddies. She picked Rand over Vrabel. She doubled down. And now you are as bad as you were when Ken Wisenhunt was the coach, which is when she took over and said it's not good enough. It's time to stop making the bad decisions. Every follow-up decision becomes worse since the Robinson firing. So it is time to hit the reset button. And it is time for Amy to understand her role in this. You are the owner, which means you make the most important decisions in a franchise. You pick the quarterback, and you know that. You pick the coach, and you know that. You pick the GM, and you know that. But you can't micromanage it every day. You can't feel like this is my team, and I'm not going to empower my guys to do their jobs. You need to do what you did when you hired Robinson and Malarkey. You need to stay out of it. She needs to hire an experienced NFL general manager and then get the hell out of the football operation. And anybody that guy doesn't want in the football operation doesn't need to be there. Whether it's the son-in-law, whether it's Burke, whomever, get them out. And the longer she waits to do this, the longer she waits to admit her own mistakes. And it's okay. We all screw up. None of us are perfect. And again, Amy was a good owner from 2015 to 2022. But the longer she waits to do this is the longer it will take for you to become not a total embarrassment in the NFL. But if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, same thing's going to keep happening. And I was right last year, and nobody wanted to hear it. Everybody told me I was wrong. Everybody said, Jared, you'll see. Watch what Rand Carthon does. I said, okay, I'll watch. And here we are a year later. You're worse, and you just lost to the worst team in the league. 615-737-1025. More your phones. 615-737-1025. Plus, what one Hall of Famer said about the Titans yesterday. Woo! We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
Brian Callahan, for now, is keeping the offense on the field. And Jeffrey Simmons is coming out on the field for the Titans. He did catch a touchdown against the Jaguars a year ago.
Odd on a fourth down to bring in the defensive lineman. You usually see that earlier down here in these goal line plays. Let's see what Brian Callahan has drawn up.
Simmons, the fullback. 4th and goal. Levis to the end zone, and it is incomplete. I think Simmons was the first read. Levis comes back the other way, but the Titans come up empty. And let's go back to 4th and goal.
I want you guys to look at Chigo Conquos. He's coming through the line of scrimmage right there. He's the guy that's wide open for Will Levis. He doesn't see him. He goes at the net, and it ends up an incomplete. And like Andrew said, cold in the stocking, but he should have had a big present to open up right there for a touchdown.
Yes, never too early for the holiday cliches.
There you go. That one was missed. Ian, do you have a thought, or do you want to go to the phones?
Oh, to the phones.
Phone line driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. Sean is up next here on the program. Sean, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. So I was actually just thinking about this, and let's say you have 2 4-10 teams, and I'm thinking Tennessee and Chicago, but just any random like 4-10-ish teams. And over the past 2 years, the GM has made trades, accumulated assets, has, the number one quarterback, has been filling holes. But even with that, even at 4-10, the team looks competitive week in and week out. Or you have a GM 2 years in, has a quarterback that isn't the future, hasn't filled holes, just brought in, a star cornerback and a star receiver and tried to be competitive. But,
Sean, what's the point?
What's the feel? What's the eye test? I think that's what determines if you clean house. I wouldn't go just by record, but what direction is the team going? And Chicago, I would stay there. Poles has done awesome. Tennessee just sucks.
I would clean house in both spots. Thank you for your call. I would clean house in both spots. In fact, I think Chicago's really screwed up because their president, Kevin Warren, he was the guy that was the commissioner of the Big Ten who screwed up their TV deals. I mean, remember when Kevin Warren was commissioner, he tried to cancel the football season because of COVID? I think he's a total moron. And so I think that they're going to blow this hire, and I don't think they're going to be able to get, again, Ryan Poles is staying there, and they want Ryan Poles to stay in place, and they want, okay, so you think Mike Vrabel's coming to work there? Ben Johnson? I mean, Adam Schefter's already said Ben Johnson, not so sure he would deal with the dysfunction in Chicago. And again, when it comes to Chicago, I mean, they've got problems too. They took Roma Dunze over addressing the offensive line, and they've got serious offensive line issues. So I'd blow them both up. But again, I don't also know Chicago the way everybody else, that would cover Chicago would know. I don't see what the point of letting Ryan Poles pick another quarterback is. I don't understand what the point of letting him pick another coach is when, again, what's going to happen is they're going to say, well, this guy didn't pick Caleb, and you're going to have it's awful. Awful. Florida Titan texts in and says, where would the Detroit Lions be now if they had listened to people like you about Dan Campbell after his first 2 seasons? Yes, the loss to the Jags was terrible, but we need to be patient and we need to stay the course. Ian, I think this is very important. I think we need to address this.
Okay.
People will say, Dan Campbell got off to a bad start in Detroit.
That's true.
Do you want to miss out on Dan Campbell and the Lions? You do know that in year 2, Dan Campbell and the Lions were 9-8. They had 1 loss down the stretch. Shockingly, it was to Carolina. But they were 9-8. They had the 4th ranked offense in the NFL with Jared Goff at quarterback. They didn't just hit on draft picks the way you guys are trying to tell me the Titans have hit on Tavondre Sweat, who doesn't do anything, by the way, in these games. But they actually hit on guys where you knew they were stars. Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round. By then, they knew he was a star. Panay Sewell. By then, they knew he was a star.
Well, is that Dan Campbell? Is that the front office? Callahan, Carthon? Like, what? There's a little bit difference there, no?
Again, he said, where would the Lions be if they had listened to people like me about Dan Campbell after his first 2 seasons? After his first 2 seasons, they had a winning record.
Callahan hasn't had his second season yet.
But again, we're talking about the top of the organization. We're talking about Carthon. We're talking about Brad Holmes. We're talking about
Campbell's the coach. That's all.
Right. But again,
Callahan's the coach.
This
I don't
is
know
year
how much.
2. This isn't year 1. There's
Yeah.
too much of that. Remember, Rand got to the podium before the draft and said, this feels like my first draft. I'm like, guess what? It's not. You drafted last year and you stunk. This is year 2.
For the front office, but he's talking Campbell.
Pull this bull crap
And
where
so
they're like,
the
oh,
coach
that
is not the
doesn't
second
count.
year, though.
Well, fine. But again, here's the deal. I don't even think Dan Campbell's that good. If you made me pick between Dan Campbell or Brad Holmes, I'm taking Brad Holmes, and I'm not even thinking twice. And I'm going to tell you what's going to happen in Detroit. Guess what's happening at the end of the year? If they don't win the Super Bowl this year, Ben Johnson leaves. That's going to be the same as Arthur Smith leaving here. So, again, I think Dan Campbell's a good rah-rah guy. I think the strength of the Lions, it's Brad Holmes. It's the drafting. It's the trading. It's the Panay Sewells. It's the Jahmyr Gibbs. It's the Amon-Ra St. Browns. That's Brian Branch. That's what it is. And, again, that's personnel. And so I go by this administration as a 2-year thing. And through 2 years, you are 9-22. I believe that's right. 9-21. You suck. So when you tell me, well, it's Dan Campbell, again, I don't even think Dan Campbell's the key to the Lions. I think the key to the Lions is the GM and the OC. And I still might fire, in all seriousness, I still might fire Dan Campbell to keep the OC. Because that's how important I think that is. Imagine how crazy it would have been if you say, hey, fire Vrabel to keep Arthur Smith. But would your offense have been better if you had done that? One texter says the Titans hit on a draft pick. Yeah, they hit on a draft pick. They actually got the pick before the clock expired. The past couple drafts have absolutely stunk, Jared. Tell the listeners they need to pay more attention to who the Titans actually value. I think the Titans right now, in terms of the drafting over the last 2 years, have one core piece going forward, and that's Latham. Again, Sweat's a nose tackle. And you can get a nose tackle anywhere. So I don't get excited about that. And with Brownlee, I think Brownlee is like a fringe starting corner. And that's not something to just go crazy about. And if any of these rookies were really good, again, you'd be winning more games because they'd be making those plays for you. One texter says there is no course. They were supposed to be good and they stink. It's not an elaborate rebuild and we are biting the bullet now. They tried to be good and they stink. Again, I think that they sold false goods to everybody, and I wonder if they sold false goods to the owner too. If they told her, no, Miss Amy, let us get rid of Mike Vrabel and we will build you a team. That I don't know. 615-737-1025. More of your phones. Plus, again, one Hall of Famer crushed Brian Callahan yesterday. We'll hit that next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game.
to get to midfield for a first down. Pressure coming. Levis throwing, looking deep, and it is incomplete. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to stop this 5-game losing streak as boos rain down in Nashville.
Titan fans were not happy, at least the ones that went to the game yesterday, except for me. I didn't go to the game yesterday, but I was happy. I was happy. Good for the draft and good, again, for the hope that one day they will clean house. And, again, when it comes to Brian Callahan, here's my exact position. If I own the Titans, the day the season's over, Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, see ya. And I would hold a press conference and I would say that we are on the search for our next football executive, our chief football executive, who will answer to me. Not to Burke Nihill, not to Adolfo Birch, but will answer to me. And we will go find that person. And then we will hire that person. And then when we hire that person will decide what to do with Brian Callahan. And if that person says, Mr. Stillman, Brian Callahan is just, I like him, he's a good guy, but I don't think he's the kind of coach I want, then we'd fire him. Hate doing it, but it's just, again, I don't want this musical firing coach GM thing going on. And I don't want to force a GM to work with a coach you don't want to work with. So I just want my position to be clear. Now, I have talked to a former NFL general manager who told me he would not even think of firing Brian Callahan. Then there was Bill Cowher yesterday on CBS. At both halftime and after the game, Bill Cowher, and I have no idea where this ranked on CBS's broadcast, but Bill Cowher went after Brian Callahan on 2 separate occasions yesterday on the CBS broadcast. Here's what Coach Cowher said first at halftime and then after the game.
For Brian Callahan, you're down there, it's 4th and 2, try to go for it down there when you know with this game, points will be at a premium. Take the points. Winning still matters for these football teams. Say what you want. A first-year head coach in Brian Callahan, prove that you can make the right decisions in terms of clock management and get points and give your team a chance. Don't sit there and feel like you have to go for everything. The only thing I'll say about this Tennessee game for Brian Callahan, twice down there inside the 10-yard line, opportunities on 4th down to kick field goals. I know points are a premium when you look at this game. Those 2 field goals that he did not even attempt could have been a difference in this game. I know it was low scoring, and I know he's trying to create something on offense.
And so I heard that, and I kind of both times was like, damn, Bill Cowher. Because the way that it usually works as far as coaches are concerned, Bill Cowher is not criticizing a coach unless there is something he saw that pissed him off. And I know Bill Cowher comes from a different era. You know, the Jeff Fisher era of, hey, you know, those Steeler teams with the bus, like they were tough and physical. And you know Cowher, like, hey, 3 points, that's a big deal in Bill Cowher's era. But it's hard not to understand the context. That at the end of the half, Bill Cowher saying, hey, every 3 points matter. And he chose not to take those 3 points. He chased the other 4. And then Bill Cowher brings it back up after the game saying, hey, you are trying to win, right? Take the points. And I mean, it's simple math. 2 field goals, that's 6 points. You lost by 4. So I just know how these former coaches work. And so if Bill Cowher is going to call out Brian Callahan, and not only call him out twice. If Bill Cowher is going to do that, Brian Callahan, that tells you he really didn't like it. And again, you on the YouTube chat can throw Cowher under the bus all you want. Cowher's got a Super Bowl ring and a Hall of Fame jacket. Though I can't believe Cowher's in the Hall of Fame. I can't. That one I just don't. Let's go to Kelly, who's up next here on our program, 615-737-1025. Kelly, go ahead.
Hey, Jared, thanks for taking my call. One thing that I think we don't talk about enough, and maybe consider a more macro view, is Amy Adams Strunk's coming to the taxpayers in Tennessee and asking for all this money. She's getting the biggest publicly funded stadium in all of the NFL. And yet she's got one of the worst run teams. Why is she not explaining that when she's wanting all this money from the people of Tennessee?
Because she's already got it.
Yeah, that's horrible. It's like it's a bait and switch. It's horrible. The politicians and her should be a lot more accountable.
But I don't understand how you do that. Like, I don't understand how. So what do? You agree to a stadium deal, and then the team stinks, and then you're like, well, now we want you to be accountable for why this team
I
sucks?
think it was horrible to begin with. They should never have given her the most money. I mean, Los Angeles didn't give that owner the most money. So why is
we ain't
Nashville
Los
doing
Angeles,
it?
buddy?
I know, but we're in Tennessee. Why are they ponying up to one of the poorest owners?
Because they wanted to keep the team.
And look what the team's giving them.
So
I
understand your anger. I just think it's misplaced. Thank you for your call. I understand your anger. I just think it's misplaced. I do wonder this, though. We talked about this on the award-winning pregame show yesterday. So Diana Rossini reported last year, after Vrabel got fired, that Amy considered firing Mike Vrabel at the end of the 2022 season, which sounds kind of like bullcrap, because I feel like everybody over there was kind of brainwashed that Vrabel is the greatest guy that ever existed, and then all of a sudden they all soured on Vrabel. But so Diana reported that Amy had wanted to fire Vrabel after 22, but then decided against it because she thought Vrabel was a good coach. And I did wonder this aloud yesterday in the pregame show. In the fall of 22, then Mayor John Cooper and Burke Nihill, the team CEO, announced an agreement in principle on a new stadium. But I understand the semantics of what it takes in order for them to get the publicly funded stadium. And the mayor can do whatever he wants, but you need the Metro Council to vote in favor of it. And they didn't vote in favor of the new stadium until 2023. Now, John Robinson was not popular like Mike Vrabel. In fact, John Robinson, with the A.J. Brown trade and the Julio Jones trade and Isaiah Wilson and Caleb Farley, John Robinson, you could argue, was very not popular at that point. But Vrabel was popular. And I almost wonder if Amy held on to Vrabel after 2022 just because of the uproar there would have been if she had fired him. Again, maybe it's a conspiracy theory. Maybe it's not. But again, once they got the votes from the Metro Council, it doesn't matter what you think. Like, the deal's done. You've paid for the stadium. And at that point in time, I believe more constituents wanted the stadium than didn't want the stadium. But if Amy had fired Vrabel, I think that could have cost her the stadium deal, because there would have been so many fans that would have been upset about it that they would have gone to their constituent, or they would have gone to their representatives and say, don't pay for that stadium. But now you want to retroactively spank her because you're mad about how her decisions have been affecting the team, but you've already agreed to the deal. Your representatives have already agreed to the deal. There is no forcing Amy to be accountable. I read in the Tennessean today, Alex Doherty talked to Sean Henry, who speaks on behalf of Bill Haslam and the ownership of the Nashville Predators. And Sean was talking about, hey, none of us are happy about the season we've gotten off to so far. And, you know, Barry Trotz said it was fantasy hockey and so on and so forth. And I remember 4 or 5 years ago, Adam Vingan wanted to talk to ownership about David Poile with the Athletic, and they sent up Sean Henry. And that's just how it's going to be, because the owner doesn't have to talk. The NFL does not require the owner to hold a press conference. And again, you've already given the owner the money. The construction is already underway with the stadium. Amy Adams Strunk, if she doesn't want to talk, she's not going to talk. And you can't force her to do it. Again, you guys want some kind of public tongue lashing. You guys want to do something about it. She should be fired. It's like she needs to sell the team. Well, she's not going to. So get over that and let's start talking about practical things that they can do. And this is where I think the people that work with her do a terrible disservice. Again, Kaharski, Ian, if you could, wrote this in his column and talked about it on his podcast yesterday. Kaharski said that Burke Nihill, the team CEO, and Chad Brinker, the president of football operations, so the president and the president, were having a discussion outside the locker room for everybody to see yesterday. And it leads to, what could they have been talking about?
So I led my column, Burke Nihill, team president, Chad Brinker, president of football operations, long talk outside the locker room that lasted beyond any player being in the locker room. I don't think they're hatching a plan to fire somebody in that setting, but very serious and long conversation post game that usually wouldn't take place in that spot at that time. So very interesting.
Those are the people that aren't accountable. I mean, when they fired Mike Vrabel and it came from Amy and Amy didn't want to talk about it, they should have sent Burke up to the podium. That's what they should have done. If he's the CEO of the team, he should have been the one to take the questions, not Rand Carthon, who didn't fire Mike Vrabel to get up there and say, you'll see Amy's vision when we're ready to put it out there. And that's the same with Brinker and Rand right now. Season's over. Where the hell are they? Hey, you guys told us you're going to spend all this money, all the sunshine pumping, the AI cancercuring.com models. How'd that work with L'Jarius Sneed? But they don't do interviews unless it's with friendly media about subjects that are pre-approved on their terms. That's the lack of accountability from the people that it's owed to you, more so than Amy. Because again, owners aren't going to talk. If they don't want to talk, owners aren't going to talk. When's the last time you heard the head of Liberty Media speak about the Atlanta Braves? 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Brian says, I'm with you. I'm thrilled they lost, but I'm also glad they were booing, and I hope Amy heard every single one of them. That is the way you get through to Amy, is by not showing up. And you guys have done a great job. You don't need any help from me. I wonder what the Bengal fan takeover is going to be like on Sunday. 615-737-1025, Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game.
This is it for Tennessee. 4th down and 10. And this one is blown dead. A flag down on the far side of the field.
False start. Offense, number 78. 5-yard penalty, 4th down.
The bugaboo all year bites the Titans at the worst possible time. Another penalty for the team that has the most penalties per game in the NFL this season.
There you go. That was PT at the end of the game with another false start. And I got to say, it was my favorite part of the game yesterday. I laughed so hard when they're like, the bugaboo all season, PT, getting another penalty. And I do wonder this, Ken texts in and says, but Jared, the Titans checked every box this offseason. I cannot believe Rand said that in that SiriusXM interview. And boy, did we play the crap out of that one. Though we checked every box, but barely not right tackle. I do wonder, what is the Titans' explanation going to be when they try to explain to people, why they suck so bad, and yet they keep running PT out there? Did you think after last year when he was horrible and the little he played, did you think he was going to be any good? And it's I have no idea what they'll say. And I don't think they can say the ball didn't bounce their way. And if they did, oh my goodness gracious. Jeff says, so you saying the Titans making themselves look like a fair weather joke to all of their fan bases is the answer? I don't think anybody thinks the Titans fan base is a fair weather fan base. I think they think that's how pro sports works. You get booed. People don't show up. They put paper bags over their heads. I saw 2 Titan fans had paper bags over their heads at the game. They were Aldi brand paper bags. My biggest takeaway from that was I didn't even know that Aldi had paper bags. I thought that was part of the deal with Aldi is they don't have bags at Aldi. What do I know? Again, I don't spend a ton of time at Aldi. No disrespect. Aldi's got very good food, but groceries. But I don't spend a lot of time at any grocery store. So I guess I'm probably not one to talk there. Okay, Ian, do we have the Joe?
I'm working on finding the specifics, but yes, kind of.
Okay. So this morning, I've said this about Joe Rexrode about a month and a half ago. I said every time they talk about Rand Carthon, Joe and Robbie talk around it. Joe never says they should fire Rand. They shouldn't fire Rand. It's always, well, Amy should know better than we do. So I finally said, stop talking around it, say it. And about a month and a half ago, Joe said he wouldn't fire Rand. So today they spent all morning talking around firing Rand, but they wouldn't talk specifically about whether or not they fire Rand. And here's how Joe Rexrode does this of talking about firing Rand without saying whether or not he thinks they should fire Rand.
I fired these last people because I think that I must believe they've run the franchise into the ground, right? I know a lot of Titans fans are like, Rabel, I'm so sorry. But that's what I must think if I did that, right?
You would think.
So if I think that, then I shouldn't have expected this team to go 11-6. Like you should expect some time to fix things. It's year 1 for the coach. It's year 2 for the front office. So, I mean, that's how I would look at it. But yeah, if someone needs to go, then I would think it would be the front office first. Maybe it's everybody, then you have the different timelines of now that are you going to make the new GM have Callahan? I would not do that, but it's all very early. It's just been so bad that look, I don't think it's unfair to discuss it. It's also like you almost create these realities where it's like, well, how could they not be firing someone? Well, I mean, it's not outrageous to not fire someone this year. I believe that.
Okay. Ian, what did you get out of that?
I mean, I think pretty much Joe's already said he wouldn't fire them in the middle of the season. Robbie
but again,
would.
We're talking about, end of the year. Would you fire them? And it sounds like Joe says, well, I mean, if Robinson and Vrabel were the problem, then I didn't expect to be 11-6 this year. But you're not 11-6. You're 3-10.
Probably worse than you had anticipated, but I don't think they were expecting like a great season.
But I don't think they were expecting 3-14.
Probably not.
So, and then he's like, but, if you have to hold somebody accountable, it would be the front office. But if you didn't, then you. So which is it? That's what Joe does. That's what Joe does. Joe talks around it. He won't just say it. He won't say it. He won't say, if the season ended today, I would bring Rand Carthon back. Or if the season ended today, I wouldn't bring Rand Carthon back. He did it that one time, and I appreciated him doing it. But now he's talking around both of it now.
Well, it's hard to know this. If you had the same information that Amy had, you would probably have a better answer.
But you don't.
Exactly.
And again, we had the same information Amy had about John Robinson. And we didn't have the same information. Excuse me. We didn't have the same information Amy had about John Robinson.
And she made that
move.
And
that was a terrible decision. Terrible. You won 9 games since you made that decision. Terrible. So Joe has texted us. And Joe said, Robbie already said he would fire them, and I already said I wouldn't.
There you go. Yeah.
Well,
I think that's
listened
true.
for about 3 hours, and I'm not sure
Not
I heard
today.
that today.
That's already been discussed.
But I want an updated heat check.
Why?
I want a heat check.
He already said it's not going to happen in
morning.
the middle of the season. So there you go. You can wait till the end of the season and see.
Tomorrow morning, if the season ended today, would Joe Rexrode, if he owned the Titans, would he fire Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker? That's all I want to know. And if he says no, I'm going to go off on it tomorrow. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2. The Commodore Hour is next. Monday Night Football, Bengals and Cowboys, 7 o'clock right here. We'll see y'all tomorrow too.